My son sent me to prison for 2 years, blaming me for his wife's miscarriage, something I never did. Every month they came to visit me, standing behind that thick glass with fake tears in their eyes, but I always refused to see them. I spent 730 days staring at a concrete wall, planning this exact moment. Today the gates open. Today I breathe free air. And today is the day my son and his wife lose absolutely everything they thought they had stolen from me. Before I tell you how I dismantled their lives piece by piece, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you think family loyalty has a limit, because I found mine the hard way. My name is Elijah Freeman. I am 69 years old, and for the last 2 years I have been inmate number 8940. But before that, I was the CEO of Freeman Logistics, one of the largest black-owned transportation networks in Atlanta. I built an empire from a single rusty van. I raised a son alone after his mother passed. I gave him the world, and in return, he gave me a prison cell. The heavy steel gate buzzed loudly, a sound that had drilled into my skull for 24 months. It slid open slowly, grinding against the track. I stepped out into the blinding Georgia morning sun. The air tasted different out here. It tasted like gasoline and pine, but mostly it tasted like opportunity. I wasn't carrying much. Just a clear plastic bag with my release papers, a cheap toothbrush, and the clothes I was wearing the night I was arrested. A gray tracksuit that hung a little looser on me now. They thought prison would break me. They thought an old man near 70 would wither away in general population. They were wrong. I didn't sit in my cell and rot. I spent 2 years in the prison gym lifting iron until my muscles remembered the strength of my youth. I spent 2 years reading law books and managing my shadow accounts through the one person who stayed loyal. I wasn't walking out as a frail old victim. I was walking out as a predator who had been sharpening his claws. I scanned the parking lot. It was mostly empty except for a faded blue sedan parked near the exit. I recognized it immediately. It was my old family car, the one I had let Dante use for errands before everything went to hell. Dante was leaning against the hood. My son. 32 years old and still looking like a boy who waiting for his allowance. He was wearing a polo shirt that was too tight, trying to look successful, but the strain around his eyes gave him away. Beside him stood Victoria, my daughter-in-law, the woman whose lies had put handcuffs on my wrists. She was wearing a white sundress and a wide-brimmed hat, looking like she was dressed for a church picnic, rather than picking up a man she accused of assault. As soon as they saw me, they straightened up. The performance began immediately. Victoria brought her hands to her mouth, feigning emotional relief. Dante took a few steps forward, opening his arms wide as if we were old friends reuniting after a long vacation. "Dad," Dante called out, his voice cracking just enough to sound pathetic. "Dad, over here. We are so glad you are finally coming home. Home." The word hung in the humid air like a bad joke. I didn't break my stride. I kept my face completely neutral. No anger, no joy, no recognition. I looked right through them as if they were made of glass. I focused on the asphalt beneath my boots and the rhythm of my own heartbeat. Victoria stepped forward, trying to intercept me. Her eyes were wet with tears that I knew she could summon on command. "Dad, please," she said, her voice trembling. "We forgive you. We know it has been hard, but we are here to take care of you now. Let's just go home and be a family again." Forgiveness. She was offering me forgiveness for a crime she invented. The audacity was almost impressive. I didn't stop. I walked past them, leaving them standing there with their arms open, embracing nothing but the empty air. Dante's confusion turned into panic. He jogged to catch up to me, reaching out to grab my shoulder. "Dad, wait. Where are you going? The car is right there. You don't have to walk. We kept your room exactly how you left it." I stopped then. I didn't turn my body, just my head. I looked at his hand on my shoulder until he pulled it back like he had touched a hot stove. His eyes searched mine, looking for the father who used to sign checks without asking questions, the father who used to fix his messes. That father died in cell block D. I didn't say a word. I just turned my gaze toward the main road. At that exact moment, a low hum vibrated through the pavement. A car turned the corner, gliding toward us like a shark through dark water. It was a Bentley Flying Spur, deep black with tinted windows. It looked out of place in front of a correctional facility, a diamond sitting in the mud. Dante and Victoria froze. They watched as the luxury car rolled to a smooth stop right in front of me. The driver's door opened and a tall man in an impeccable charcoal suit stepped out. It was Strickland, my attorney, my right hand. The only man who knew where all the bodies were buried, figuratively speaking. He walked around the car, ignoring Dante and Victoria completely. He opened the rear door for me and nodded, his face grim and professional. "Mr. Freeman Strickland," said his voice deep and steady. "Welcome back, sir," Dante sputtered. "Strickland. What is this? Why are you here? We are taking my dad home. We are his family. You are just a lawyer." Strickland didn't even blink. He looked at me, waiting for my command. I tossed my plastic bag of prison belongings onto the leather seat and climbed in. The interior smelled of expensive leather and conditioned air, a stark contrast to the sweat and mildew I had lived in for 2 years. Dante rushed the car, grabbing the top of the open door before Strickland could close it. He leaned in, his face flushed with a mix of anger and fear. "Dad, you can't just leave with him. You are not thinking clearly. Prison messes with your head. We have power of attorney. We are your legal guardians. You have to come with us to the estate." The estate. That's what they called my house. The house I bought with my blood and sweat. The house they had been living in like parasites while I slept on a steel cot. I finally spoke. My voice was raspy from disuse, but it was cold hard as granite. "Let go of the door, Dante. Dad, listen to me," Dante pleaded, his eyes darting to Victoria, who was now standing nervously behind him. "We are doing this for you. You need rest. You need to come home." I leaned back into the soft leather seat and looked him dead in the eye. "Home," I repeated slowly, letting the word roll around my mouth. "You mean the house on Peachtree Battle Avenue?" "Yes," Dante said, relieved. They said, "Yes, home." I let a small, dry smile touch my lips. It wasn't a nice smile. "I don't have a home to go to with you, Dante," I said calmly. "And if you check your mail today, you will realize you don't have one either." Dante frowned, confusion wrinkling his forehead. "What are you talking about?" I nodded to Strickland. He closed the door firmly, forcing Dante to step back. The window rolled up, sealing me inside the quiet luxury of the Bentley. I watched them through the tinted glass. Dante was shouting something, mouthing words I couldn't hear, while Victoria clutched her purse, looking terrified. "Drive," I told Strickland. The Bentley pulled away, leaving my son and his wife in a cloud of dust, standing next to a rusted sedan in a prison parking lot. As we merged onto the highway, the silence in the car was heavy but comfortable. Strickland glanced at me through the rear-view mirror. "Did you want to stop for food, sir?" Strickland asked. "No," I said. "I'm not hungry. Tell me the status." Strickland kept his eyes on the road. "The transfer is complete. The trust they thought they had access to has been dissolved. We moved the assets into the blind trust 48 hours before your sentencing, just as you instructed. They have been drawing from a dummy account I set up. And the house I asked." Strickland allowed himself a small smirk. "The bank foreclosed on the mortgage at 9 this morning. Since you stopped making the payments from the main account, the debt piled up. Technically, they are trespassing as of right now. But since you secretly bought the debt from the bank through the shell company, you are now the owner of the foreclosure. You are their landlord, Mr. Freeman, and you are evicting them." "Good," I said, closing my eyes. I leaned my head back and let the motion of the car soothe me. My mind drifted back to the day it all ended. 2 years ago. The image was burned into my retinas. I remembered standing at the bottom of the grand staircase in my foyer. I had been drinking a glass of scotch, celebrating a new contract. I heard shouting upstairs, Dante and Victoria. They were always fighting about money or about Dante's wandering eye. Then I saw her fall. Victoria tumbled down the stairs. It wasn't a graceful fall, it was violent. She landed at my feet. I did what any human being would do. I dropped my glass and knelt down to help her. I reached out to check her pulse to see if she was breathing. That was when Dante appeared at the top of the stairs. His eyes were wide with panic, but then he saw me kneeling over her, and the panic shifted into something calculating. When the police arrived, the story had already been written. Victoria, through her tears, told the officers that I was drunk. She said I had been aggressive. She said I pushed her because I was angry about their spending. She said I killed her baby. I was innocent. But the optics were terrible. A wealthy, older black man, a young white daughter-in-law, a miscarriage, and a son who backed up her story with tears in his eyes. My lawyer at the time, who I later found out was in debt to Dante's bookie, told me to take a plea deal. I fired him. I fought it. But the jury saw a grieving mother and a confused son. They didn't see the truth. They didn't see that Victoria had bruises on her arms that were days old. They didn't know that Dante had a mistress who was threatening to expose him. They didn't know that the baby, if there even was a baby, was the only leverage Victoria had to keep Dante from leaving her. They sent me away for 2 years. Aggravated assault. I opened my eyes, snapping back to the present. The Bentley was cruising down the highway, but we weren't heading toward my old neighborhood. "Where are we going?" Strickland asked, breaking the silence. "The Four Seasons. I booked the penthouse suite for the month." "Excellent choice, sir." I looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline. It hadn't changed much, but I had. I used to think family was everything. I used to think that blood was a bond that couldn't be broken. I was a fool. Blood is just biology. Loyalty is a choice. And betrayal is an act of war. Strickland handed me a tablet. "Here's the surveillance report from the last week." I took the device and swiped through the photos. My blood boiled, but my face remained cold. There were pictures of Dante and Victoria throwing a party at my house just 3 days ago. Champagne bottles everywhere. Strangers sleeping on my custom Italian sofas. Victoria was wearing my late wife's jewelry. A diamond necklace I had given my wife for our 30th anniversary hung around Victoria's neck while she laughed with a drink in her hand. They were celebrating. They thought I would come out of prison broken and ashamed. They thought they could manipulate me into a nursing home, declare me incompetent, and take control of the empire I built. They thought the old Elijah Freeman was coming home. They didn't realize that Elijah Freeman died in that cell. The man sitting in this Bentley was someone else entirely. "Strickland," I said, zooming in on a photo of Dante laughing with a group of friends. "Yes, sir. Cancel Dante's credit cards, all of them, even the emergency ones, and report the Porsche Victoria is driving as stolen. It's in my name, isn't it?" "Technically, yes, sir. It belongs to the company fleet." "Then report it. I want her pulled over before the sun goes down." Strickland nodded, pulling out his phone to make the call. "Consider it done." I watched the city pass by. I knew exactly what they were doing right now. They were probably racing back to the house, trying to figure out what happened, trying to get into the safe, trying to call the bank. They would find the codes changed. The locks were about to be changed too. The doctor's report from the prison had been clear. I was physically fit, mentally sharp, and medically sound. But Dante had spent the last 6 months telling everyone I was losing my mind. He was setting the stage for a conservatorship. He wanted to be my guardian. He wanted to lock me away in a facility where he could visit once a year while he spent my millions. I tapped the screen of the tablet, opening the financial app. I watched the numbers. The transfer I initiated 3 days ago was complete. The accounts Dante had access to were now showing a balance of 0, not a single cent. I imagined the look on his face when his card got declined for the first time. It would be a small victory, but a sweet one. This was just the beginning. I had a list. Dante, Victoria, the judge who sentenced me, the former lawyer who sold me out, and Candace, the mistress who started this whole mess. I wasn't just going to take my money back. I was going to take their reputation, their freedom, their future. The Bentley turned into the driveway of the Four Seasons. The valet rushed to open the door. I stepped out, adjusting my suit jacket. It felt good to wear high-quality wool again. As I walked into the lobby, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Dante. "Dad, please pick up. We are at the house. The locks aren't working. What is going on? Call me. We are worried about you." I looked at the message and deleted it. Worried. They should be worried. I walked to the elevator, ready to begin the first night of the rest of my life. Tonight I would sleep on Egyptian cotton sheets. Tonight they would sleep in a motel if they could afford it. The elevator doors closed and I saw my reflection in the polished metal. Gray beard eyes, sharp as flint shoulders broad. I looked like a man ready for war. Let the games begin. I sat at the mahogany dining table in the penthouse suite of the Four Seasons, overlooking the glittering lights of Atlanta. A medium-rare ribeye steak and a glass of vintage Cabernet sat before me. For the first time in 730 days, I wasn't eating slop on a metal tray with a plastic spork. I sliced the meat slowly, savoring the resistance of the knife and the silence of the room. But peace is a luxury men like me are rarely afforded for long. A heavy pounding on the double doors shattered the quiet. I didn't jump. I didn't even look up from my meal. I knew who it was. They had bribed a bellhop or caused a scene in the lobby to get up here. Desperation makes people bold, and my son was nothing if not desperate. The doors burst open. Dante marched in first, his face flushed with a mixture of exertion and faux concern. Victoria trailed behind him, clutching her designer purse like a shield, her heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. Dad, Dante shouted, breathless. Dante shouted, "Thank God we found you." The concierge tried to stop us, but I told him it was a medical emergency. I took a sip of wine, letting the rich liquid coat my tongue. I didn't offer them a seat. I didn't offer them a greeting. I just watched them invade my sanctuary like the parasites they were. Dante rushed to the table, placing his hands on the white tablecloth, leaning in close. His breath smelled of stale coffee and fear. "Dad, you have to stop this," he said, his voice dropping to a patronizing whisper, the kind you use on a toddler or a dementia patient. "You are not well." We spoke to the warden. He said isolation can cause paranoia in older men. "You are confused, Dad. You think we are your enemies, but we are the only ones who care about you." Victoria stepped up beside him, nodding vigorously. Her eyes were wide, pleading. "Pop," she said, using that nickname I always hated. "Please listen to Dante. We were so worried when you got into that car with a stranger. You need to be home where we can monitor your medication. You need rest. You are clearly having an episode. An episode. That was their angle. They were trying to build a narrative right here in this hotel room. If they could convince the staff or the police that I was senile, they could drag me back to the house and lock me away. It was a clumsy attempt at gaslighting, but I could see the panic underneath it. They needed me back under their thumb because without me they were drowning." I carefully placed my knife and fork on the plate. The clink of silver against china echoed in the tense room. I picked up a linen napkin and wiped my mouth. "Are you finished?" I asked, my voice low and steady. Dante blinked, taken aback by my calm. "Dad, we are not trying to fight you. We just want to take care of you. You are old now. You spent 2 years in a cage. It breaks a man's mind. You need us to manage things. You need us to make the decisions." I stood up then, slowly. I unfolded my full height, towering over my son. He took a half step back, instinct overriding his arrogance. "You talk about my time in that cage like you didn't put me there, Dante," I said. "You talk about care like you know the meaning of the word." I turned and walked to the small side table near the window where my leather briefcase sat. I opened it and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I tossed it onto the dining table. It slid across the smooth wood and stopped right in front of Victoria. "Open it," I commanded. "What is this?" Dante asked, eyeing the envelope suspiciously. "Open it," I repeated, my voice cracking like a whip. Victoria reached out with a trembling hand and undid the clasp. She pulled out a stack of glossy 8x10 photographs. As she shuffled through them, the color drained from her face, leaving her looking like a wax doll. Dante looked over her shoulder and I saw his jaw clench. These were the photos my private investigator had taken. High-resolution images of the life they lived while I was rotting in a 6x8 cell. "You see, Dante," I said, walking around the table to stand behind them. "I had a lot of time to think in prison. But I also had a lot of time to read reports. You told the judge you were devastated by the tragedy. You told the jury that the stress caused Victoria to miscarry. You stood there in court wearing black suits and crying crocodile tears." I pointed a finger at the top photo. "That picture was taken 3 days after my sentencing. 3 days. The photo showed my living room. My furniture had been pushed against the walls to make a dance floor. Dozens of people, strangers, were drinking from my crystal glasses. Dante was standing on my coffee table, holding a bottle of champagne, spraying it over the crowd like a rap star. And this one," I said, pointing to the next photo. "This is my bedroom." Victoria gasped and tried to cover the image, but Dante had already seen it. It was Victoria lying to my custom-made king-size bed. She wasn't alone. There was a man with her. A man who definitely wasn't Dante. He was younger, a personal trainer type, and they were tangled in my Egyptian cotton sheets. Dante snatched the photo from her hand, staring at it. His face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. He looked at Victoria, and for a second I thought he might hit her. "You said you were grieving," I said, my voice cold as ice. "You said you couldn't sleep because of the trauma. Looks like you slept just fine, Victoria. In my bed, with a stranger." Dante looked up at me, his eyes wild. "Where did you get these? You were in prison. I have eyes everywhere, Dante. I built this city. Do you think a few bars could stop me from seeing what was happening in my own house?" Victoria started to sob. but it was a dry, ugly sound. "Pop, please let me explain." It was a moment of weakness. "I was lonely. I missed you so much I didn't know what I was doing." "Stop it," I snapped. "Stop the lies. You didn't miss me. You missed my money. You missed the lifestyle I provided. You threw a party to celebrate my incarceration. You drank my wine, you drove my cars, and you defiled my home." Dante crushed the photos in his fist. "This doesn't change anything." He spat, his voice turning venomous. "So what if we partied? We were under stress. We needed to blow off steam. It doesn't change the fact that you are legally incompetent." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. He slammed it down on the table next to my steak. "This is a durable power of attorney," Dante announced, a triumphant sneer curling his lip. "And this is a petition for emergency conservatorship. We filed it this morning. We have a doctor willing to testify that your behavior is erratic and dangerous. You are coming with us, Dad. And if you refuse, we will call the police and have you committed for a psychiatric hold. We control your accounts now. We control your assets. We control you." He was bluffing, but he didn't know it yet. He thought he held a royal flush. He didn't realize he was playing at a table I owned. I looked at the papers. I didn't even read them. I just laughed. A low, rumbling laugh that came from deep in my chest. "What is so funny?" Dante shouted, losing his composure. "You think this is a joke? I can freeze your bank accounts right now. I can leave you on the street with nothing." "Go ahead," I said. "Do it." Dante glared at me. He pulled out his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen as he logged into the banking app he had been using for the past 2 years, the app that was linked to what he thought was the family trust. I watched him. I watched the confidence drain from his face drop by drop. He tapped the screen harder. He swiped down to refresh. He frowned. "What the hell?" Dante muttered. "What is it?" Victoria asked, looking over his shoulder. "It says 0, Dante whispered. He looked up at me, panic starting to set in. "It says 0 balance. Account frozen. Access denied." He tried another account, then another. Same result. Access denied. Insufficient funds. Account closed. "What did you do?" Dante screamed, throwing his phone onto the table. "Where is the money? There was $4 million in the liquid account last week." I took a slow sip of my wine, enjoying the bouquet. "You are right, Dante. There was money. But it wasn't your money. It was never your money." I set the glass down and leaned forward, resting my knuckles on the table. "Did you really think I went into that trial blind?" I asked. "Did you think I didn't see the sharks circling? 3 days before the verdict, while you were busy picking out your outfit for court, I had a meeting with Strickland. I walked over to the window looking out at the city I loved. I created a blind trust, Dante. Do you know what that is?" Dante shook his head, mute with shock. "It means I transferred legal ownership of everything Freeman Logistics, the real estate, the investment portfolios, the offshore accounts, into a trust administered by a third party. I gave up control so that you couldn't take it. I turned back to face them. The account you have been draining for the past 2 years, the one you used to buy that Porsche for Victoria and pay for your parties. That was a dummy account. I left just enough in there to keep you fat and happy to let you hang yourselves. I wanted to see what you would do when you thought no one was watching. And you didn't disappoint. But today," I continued, my voice hardening, "today the dummy account was closed, the blind trust is active, and the beneficiary of that trust is me. Not you, not your wife. Me." Dante looked at his phone again, as if hoping the numbers would magically reappear. But they wouldn't. "You can't do this," he stammered. "We have expenses. The mortgage on the house is due, the car payments, the club memberships." "Not my problem," I said. "And that power of attorney you are waving around? It is useless. It applies to my personal assets. I have no personal assets, Dante. I own nothing on paper. The trust owns it all. And you have no authority over the trust." Victoria let out a small whimper. "But Dante, the credit cards. I tried to use the black card at the gas station on the way here. It was declined." I smiled. "Of course it was. I canceled them all this morning. You are holding plastic scrap." Dante looked like he was about to vomit. He slumped into one of the dining chairs, the fight draining out of him. "Dad," he said, his voice trembling, "you can't leave us with nothing. We are your family." Family, I repeated the word, tasting like ash. Family doesn't frame their father for a crime he didn't commit. Family doesn't sleep with strangers in their father's bed while he sleeps on concrete. I walked to the door and opened it wide. Get out. Dad, please. Dante begged, tears actually forming in his eyes now. We have nowhere to go. The house belongs to the bank now, I interrupted. Or rather, it belongs to the holding company that bought the debt this morning, which happens to be owned by the trust. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises before the sheriff arrives to throw your things on the lawn. Victoria stared at me with pure hatred. You planned this. You planned this whole thing. You are a monster. I am a man who learned to survive, I said. Now get out of my suite before I call security and have you removed for trespassing. And trust me, I don't think you want another police report on your record. Not with what is coming next. Dante stood up slowly, looking defeated. He grabbed Victoria's arm and dragged her toward the door. As he passed me, he stopped. This isn't over, Dad, he hissed. We will fight this. I looked him in the eye and saw the fear behind the threat. I know it's not over, Dante, I said softly. It's just beginning. I slammed the door behind them and locked it. The sound of the lock clicking into place was the most satisfying sound I had heard in years. I went back to the table and sat down. My steak was cold, but I didn't care. I picked up my fork and took a bite. It tasted like victory. They thought they could break me. They thought they could take everything I built. They didn't understand that you can't rob a man who is already prepared to lose it all just to see you fall. I pulled out my phone and dialed Strickland. It's done, I said. They know about the money. Good, Strickland replied. The sheriff is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Make sure the media is there, I said. I want the neighbors to see. I want everyone to see. Understood, sir? I hung up and poured myself another glass of wine. The first battle was won, but the war for my name and my legacy was far from over. Tomorrow, I would take back my house. And after that, I would take back my truth. The morning sun hit the manicured lawns of Buckhead with a deception of peace. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. The birds were singing and the sprinklers were hissing rhythmically. From the back seat of my Bentley parked a block away, I watched the patrol cars roll up to the driveway of what used to be my home. I adjusted my cufflinks. They were gold engraved with my initials. Small details matter when you are dismantling a life. Beside me, Strickland was reviewing the eviction order one last time. It is time, Sir Strickland said. I nodded. Let the sheriff do his job first. I want to see them squirm before I step onto the stage. Sheriff Miller was a good man. We had fished together for 20 years. He was the one who arrested me 2 years ago, and I saw the pain in his eyes when he put the cuffs on. He knew something was wrong then, but he had to follow the law. Today he was following the law again, but this time the law was on my side. I watched Miller walk up the stone path to the front door. He adjusted his hat and pounded on the heavy oak wood. It took a moment. Then the door swung open. Dante stood there. He was wearing silk pajamas I had paid for, and he looked like he had barely slept. I could see the confusion on his face from here. He was shouting, waving his hands. Then Victoria appeared behind him, wrapped in a robe, looking disheveled and frightened. Miller handed Dante a piece of paper. Dante swatted it away. The paper fluttered to the ground. That was a mistake. You do not disrespect a man with a badge on your front porch, especially when you are trespassing. I tapped the driver's shoulder. Take us in. The Bentley rolled forward silently, gliding up the driveway just as Dante's voice escalated to a scream that echoed through the neighborhood. This is my father's house, Dante yelled, his voice cracking with entitlement. I have power of attorney. You cannot kick us out. We have rights. We are the victims here. Miller remained calm, his hand resting near his belt. Son, you have no rights to this property. The bank foreclosed on this house yesterday afternoon. You were served notice via email and certified mail. You ignored it. Now you are trespassing. The bank. Dante laughed a hysterical sound. My father has millions in the bank. The mortgage is on autopay. You are making a mistake. A huge mistake. Miller pointed to the curb where a team of movers I had hired was waiting. You have 10 minutes to grab your essentials. After that, these gentlemen are going to remove everything else. Dante stepped forward, puffing his chest out, trying to intimidate a man who had stared down armed felons. Do not touch my things. I will sue you. I will sue the department. I will sue the bank. That was my cue. I opened the car door and stepped out onto the driveway. The sound of my dress shoes on the pavement was sharp and distinct. Dante froze. His eyes locked onto me, and for a second he looked like a child caught stealing from the cookie jar. "You won't be suing anyone, Dante," I said, my voice projecting clearly across the lawn. "Dad," Dante stammered. "Dad, tell him. Tell him this is a mistake. Tell him you own this house." I walked past the sheriff and stopped at the bottom of the steps looking up at my son. The dynamic had shifted. He was no longer the master of the manor. He was a squatter. "I did own this house," I said calmly, past tense. "But you see, Dante, mortgages require payments, and since you were so busy spending my money on parties and Porsches, you forgot to pay the one bill that keeps a roof over your head." Dante's face went pale. "The auto pay." "The trust." "I canceled it," I said. "The bank called me in prison 3 months ago. They said the payments were delinquent. I told them to proceed with foreclosure. I let it happen." Victoria let out a gasp, covering her mouth. "You let us lose the house." I ignored her and turned to Miller. "Sheriff, is the property secured?" "It is, Mr. Freeman," Miller said, tipping his hat, "but the current occupants are refusing to vacate." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. I walked up the stairs, slowly forcing Dante to back up into the foyer. I held the paper up to his face. "Do you know what this is, Dante?" He stared at it, his eyes unable to focus. "This is a deed," I explained. "Yesterday, when the bank finalized the foreclosure, they put the property up for immediate auction to clear the toxic asset. A holding company bought it for cash within 5 minutes. I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a whisper that only he and Victoria could hear. "I own the holding company, Dante. I bought the debt. I am not your father right now. I am the landlord, and I am evicting you." Dante looked at me with pure horror. "You bought our debt." "I bought my house back," I corrected him. "You just happen to be the infestation living inside it." I turned back to the movers. "Clear it out. Everything. If it is not nailed down, it goes on the lawn." "No," Dante screamed, lunging for the first mover who walked through the door. Miller stepped in smoothly, grabbing Dante's arm and twisting it behind his back. Dante yelped in pain. "Mr. Freeman," Miller warned, "if you interfere with the eviction, I will arrest you for disorderly conduct and resisting an officer. Do you want to go to jail today?" Dante slumped defeated. Miller let him go and shoved him toward the lawn. Victoria ran after him, crying hysterically. The movers descended like locusts. They were efficient. I had paid them extra for speed. They marched into the house and started hauling out furniture, clothes, electronics, and boxes. It was a spectacle. And spectacles attract an audience. I stood by my Bentley watching. The neighbors were coming out. These were the same neighbors who had turned their backs on me 2 years ago. The same people who had whispered that I was a violent man, that I belonged in prison. Now they stood on their porches, phones in hand, recording the downfall of the Freeman dynasty. Mrs. Gable from across the street was live streaming. I could see her holding her phone up, narrating the scene to her Facebook friends. "Look at this," she was probably saying. "The son is being thrown out. Elijah Freeman is back." Dante and Victoria stood by the mailbox, watching their life pile up on the grass. My custom leather sofa landed with a thud. Boxes of Victoria's designer shoes were dumped out, spilling red bottoms onto the dirt. A flat-screen television was leaned precariously against a lamppost. It was humiliating. It was raw. It was public. Victoria was screaming at the movers, trying to grab dresses as they walked by. "Careful, that is silk, you idiots." One of the movers, a big man with a beard, ignored her and tossed a bundle of clothes onto a pile of wet leaves. Dante was pacing, running his hands through his hair. He looked at the neighbors. "Stop filming," he shouted. "Stop looking at us. This is illegal. This is harassment." I walked over to the edge of the lawn near where Mrs. Gable was recording. I wanted to make sure the angle was right. I wanted the world to see this. "Dad," Dante yelled, seeing me. "Stop them, please. Everyone is watching." "That is the point, son," I said. "You wanted to be the man of the house. You wanted the attention. Now you have it." I signaled the foreman of the moving crew. "Bring out the master bedroom contents." They brought out the mattress, the same mattress Victoria had been sleeping on with her lovers. They dragged it across the asphalt driveway. Then came the drawers. They dumped the contents of the nightstands into a heap. I walked over to the pile of personal items. Dante and Victoria were too busy arguing with the sheriff to notice me. I saw a manila envelope sticking out of a box of Dante's things. I knew what was inside, because I had placed it there myself 5 minutes before the movers arrived, sneaking it into a box while chaos reigned. I picked it up. It was labeled medical records. I pretended to inspect it. I acted as if I was checking to see if it was something of mine, something I should keep. "What is this?" I said loud enough for the camera phones to pick up. I opened the envelope and pulled out a glossy sheet of paper. It was an ultrasound image, a black and white picture of a fetus. Dante turned around, hearing my voice. He saw the paper in my hand. His eyes went wide, not with recognition, but with confusion. "Give me that," he said, rushing over. "That is private." I looked at the ultrasound. Then I looked at the date stamped in the corner. "This is dated 6 months ago, Dante," I said, my brow furrowing in mock confusion. "Victoria hasn't been pregnant for 2 years, not since the incident." Victoria froze. She looked at Dante. "What is he talking about, Dante?" I let the ultrasound slip from my fingers. It fluttered to the ground, landing face up on the grass. The camera phones zoomed in. Dante lunged for it, snatching it up. "It is nothing," he stammered. "It is old. It is a mistake." But Victoria had seen it. She snatched it from his hands. Her eyes scanned the image. "This isn't mine," she whispered. Her voice was trembling. "This isn't my name on the top." "Who is Candace?" The name hung in the air. Candace. Dante's face turned a color I didn't think was possible for a human being. He looked at me, and he knew. He knew I knew. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him with cold, dead eyes. I had planted the seed. Now I would watch the weeds grow. "Who is Candace?" Victoria screamed, shoving the paper into Dante's chest. "Is this why you have been disappearing on Tuesday nights? Is this where our money went?" Dante tried to grab her, tried to shush her. "Baby, not here. Not in front of him. Not in front of the cameras." But it was too late. The neighbors were eating it up. The comments on the live streams were probably flying. The perfect grieving couple was crumbling in real time on their front lawn. I turned my back on them and walked toward the Bentley. Strickland was waiting by the open door. "Is it done, sir?" Strickland asked. "The eviction is done," I said. "The destruction has just begun." I got into the car. As we drove away, I looked back one last time. Dante and Victoria were screaming at each other in the middle of a pile of garbage. The sheriff was shaking his head. The neighbors were still filming. They had 24 hours to find a place to sleep. They had $0 in their accounts. And now they had a mystery woman and a baby that wasn't theirs tearing them apart from the inside. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "Did you see it?" I asked the person on the other end. "Yes, Mr. Freeman," the voice replied. "It was perfect." "Good," I said. "Now get Candace ready. She is up next." I hung up. The car turned the corner and the house disappeared from view. But the image of Dante's face when he saw that ultrasound would keep me warm for a long time. He wanted to play games with my life. He wanted to frame me. He wanted to steal my legacy. He forgot one thing. I was the one who taught him how to play, and I always kept an ace up my sleeve. Next stop, the bank. I had to make sure the acquisition of the media company was proceeding on schedule. If they wanted to cry to the press, I wanted to make sure I owned the microphone. The neon sign of the Starlight Motel buzzed with a dying flicker, casting a sickly yellow light onto the cracked pavement of the parking lot. This was where the dynasty of Dante Freeman had relocated. Room 104. $40 a night, cash only. It was a far cry from the 7-bedroom estate in Buckhead, but it was exactly what they could afford with the cash they had managed to scrape together from pawned watches and hidden stashes. I sat in my suite at the Four Seasons listening to the audio feed from the bug my private investigator had planted in Dante's luggage days ago. The sound quality was crisp. I poured myself a glass of sparkling water and leaned back, prepared to enjoy the show. Victoria was screaming. Her voice, usually so composed and dripping with false sweetness, was now shrill and jagged. "You are useless, Dante," she shrieked. "Look at this place. There are stains on the sheets. There are bugs in the bathroom. I cannot live like this. And that ultrasound, Dante. Who is she? Who is Candace?" I heard the sound of glass breaking. Dante must have thrown something. "It doesn't matter who she is," Dante yelled back, his voice thick with panic. "She is nobody. She was a mistake." "I was stressed, Victoria. You were cold. You were popping pills and staring at the wall. I needed an escape." An escape. Victoria laughed a bitter, hollow sound. You needed an escape. I lied to the police for you. I perjured myself in court for you. I sent your father to prison to save your skin, and you thanked me by sleeping with some woman named Candace. You are pathetic. The arguing continued in circles, a snake eating its own tail. They blamed each other for the eviction, for the frozen accounts, for my return. They were rats trapped in a sinking ship, turning on one another to survive. Then Dante's phone rang. The ringtone cut through their shouting. Answer it, Victoria hissed. It is probably a bill collector already. Dante answered on speakerphone. Hello, Dante baby, a female voice purred through the speaker. It was a voice I recognized from my surveillance reports. Candace. Where is my money, Dante? Candace asked, her tone shifting from seductive to sharp in a heartbeat. It is the 1st of the month. You didn't send the transfer. Rent is due and my baby needs diapers. Dante stammered. Candace, listen. There has been a complication. My accounts are temporarily frozen. It is a banking error. I just need a few days. I don't have a few days, Candace snapped. And I saw the news, Dante. I saw your daddy kicking you out of that big house. I saw your wife crying on the lawn. It doesn't look like a banking error to me. It looks like you are broke. Dante tried to interrupt, but she cut him off. If I don't have $5,000 by tomorrow night, Dante, I am going to the press. I am going to tell them everything. I am going to tell them about our Tuesday nights. I am going to tell them about the baby. And I might just tell them what you said about your wife's accident 2 years ago. Dante went silent. The threat hung in the mildewed air of the motel room. Don't do that, Candace, Dante pleaded, his voice dropping to a whisper. Please. I will get you the money. I promise. Just give me 24 hours. You have until noon tomorrow, Candace said, or I burn your world down. The line went dead. I took a sip of my water. Dante was cornered. He had no money. He had no allies. And now he had a mistress threatening to expose the one secret that could send him to prison for life. I wondered what a desperate man would do. I didn't have to wait long to find out. Whatever shred of dignity my son had left evaporated in that motel room. I listened as the silence stretched out, followed by the sound of Dante pacing the cramped floor. The cheap carpet must have muffled his footsteps, but I could hear his heavy breathing. We need money, Victoria said, her voice devoid of emotion. We need cash fast. I know, Dante snapped. I am thinking. He was quiet for a moment. Then I heard it. The spark of a terrible idea. Candace, he muttered. What about her? Victoria asked. She is our way out, Dante said, his voice gaining a manic energy. She is the solution. Dad is back right. He is playing the hard man, but I know him. He has a savior complex. He always wants to be the hero, the protector of the broken. What are you talking about? Victoria asked. We use Candace, Dante explained. I will call her back. I will tell her the truth that I am broke, but I will give her a better offer. I will tell her to go to Dad. Go to Elijah. Victoria scoffed. He will eat her alive. No, he won't, Dante insisted. Not if she plays it right. She goes to him as a victim. She tells him I lied to her too. She tells him I manipulated her, that I left her destitute with a child. Dad hates me right now. If she goes in there crying about how I ruined her life, he will eat it up. He will give her money just to spite me. He will write her a check to help the poor single mother abandoned by his evil son. And then what? Victoria asked. Then she splits it with us, Dante said. We tell her to ask for $50,000, enough to relocate. She gives us half we get out of this hole and she disappears. I shook my head slowly in my hotel suite. My son was not just a criminal, he was a coward. He was willing to pimp out the mother of his child to scam his own father. He thought he knew me. He thought I was a soft touch. He didn't realize that the man who built Freeman Logistics knew how to spot a hustle from a mile away. I listened as Dante made the call. He spun the web perfectly. He promised Candace the world. He told her I was sitting on millions and that I was desperate to prove I was a better man than him. He coached her on what to say. Cry, he told her. Tell him you have nowhere to go. Tell him you are afraid of me. Candace listened. She was desperate too. She agreed to the plan. She is meeting him tomorrow, Dante told Victoria after he hung up. She is going to text him. She will meet him at the old warehouse in the industrial district. Dad still keeps an office there. Victoria laughed a cold sound. I hope she milks him for everything he has. I reached for my phone and dialed Strickland. Get the warehouse ready, I said, and make sure the audiovisual equipment is set up. We are going to have a guest. The warehouse was a cavernous steel beast on the south side of Atlanta. It was where I stored my first fleet of trucks. The air inside was thick with dust and memories. I sat in a leather chair in the center of the empty floor, illuminated by a single spotlight. Behind me, a massive projection screen stood dark and silent. At 2 in the afternoon, the side door creaked open. Candace walked in. She was younger than I expected, maybe 24. She was beautiful in a rough way, but she had dressed down for the occasion. No makeup, a simple dress that looked worn. She was holding a tissue in her hand. She spotted me and hesitated. The atmosphere was intimidating, designed to make her feel small. I didn't stand up. I just watched her walk across the concrete floor, the echo of her footsteps bouncing off the metal walls. "Mr. Freeman," she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I am Elijah Freeman," I said. "You must be Candace." She nodded, and the tears started instantly, just as Dante had coached her. "I am so sorry to bother you, sir," she sobbed, pressing the tissue to her eyes. I didn't know where else to turn. "Dante, your son, he told me he loved me. He told me he was leaving his wife. I have a baby, Mr. Freeman, a little boy. And now Dante says he has no money. He says he can't help us. He blocked my number." She looked up at me, her eyes wide and pleading. "I am afraid of him," she continued. "He gets so angry. I have nowhere to go. I just need a little help to get back on my feet. I know you are a good man. I know you aren't like him." It was a good performance. Solid B+. If I were the man I was 2 years ago, I might have reached for my checkbook. I might have felt pity for this girl caught in my son's web, but I wasn't that man. "Stop," I said. The word was quiet, but it carried enough weight to silence her instantly. Candace stopped crying. She looked at me confused. "You can stop the act, Candace," I said, leaning forward. "I know Dante sent you. I know you spoke to him last night at 11:45 p.m. I know the plan is to ask me for $50,000 and split it with him." Candace's face went pale. She took a step back, looking toward the door. "I don't know what you are talking about." I picked up a remote control from the small table beside me. "Dante thinks he is playing chess," I said, "but he is playing checkers, and he is bad at it. He thinks I am a mark. He thinks I am a senile old man with a bleeding heart." I pointed the remote at the screen behind me. "But Dante has a habit of talking too much, Candace, especially when he thinks he is safe." I pressed the button. The massive screen flickered to life. The audio boomed through the warehouse speakers. It was a video recording, grainy but clear enough. It was taken from inside my house 2 weeks before I was released. My private investigator had placed a camera in the ventilation vent of the master bedroom. On the screen, Dante and Victoria were sitting on the bed. They were drinking wine and laughing. "What about the girl Victoria asked on the video? The one from the club? Candace, is she going to be a problem?" Dante waved his hand dismissively. "Candace is a nobody, babe. She is just a ratchet side piece. She thinks she has leverage because of the kid, but she doesn't know who she is dealing with." On the warehouse floor, the real Candace froze. Her eyes were glued to the screen. If she gets too loud, Dante continued on the video, a cruel smirk on his face. "We handle her. We plant something in her car. A little meth, maybe some fentanyl. Make an anonymous call to the cops. She has a record, right? Who are they going to believe? A wealthy businessman or a single mom with a drug problem? She will lose the kid to the state and she will be locked up for 10 years. Problem solved." Victoria laughed on the screen. "You are wicked, Dante." I pressed the button again and the screen went black. The silence in the warehouse was heavy. Candace was shaking, but not from fake sorrow this time. She was shaking with rage. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides. "He called me a nobody," she whispered. "He said he would plant drugs on me. He said he would take my son." I stood up and walked toward her. "He was going to use you, Candace," I said. "He was going to use you to get money from me, and then he was going to destroy you. That is who my son is. That is who he has always been." I stopped a few feet from her. "He sent you here to rob me, but he sent you into a lion's den without a weapon." Candace looked at me, tears streaming down her face again, but these were real. These were tears of fury. "What do you want?" she asked. "Why did you show me this?" "Because I have a proposition for you," I said. "I don't want your money," she spat. "I want him to suffer. I want to burn him down." "Good," I said, smiling for the first time. "Because that is exactly what I need." I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope. It wasn't money. It was a plane ticket and a key to a safe house I owned in Savannah. "You are going to help me, Candace," I said. "You are going to be the witness that buries him. You know things. You know about the night of the accident 2 years ago, don't you? Dante talks when he is drunk. He talks to you." Candace nodded slowly, wiping her face. He told me. He told me everything." "Then you are going to testify," I said. "But not yet. First we need to let him think he won." I handed her the envelope. "Go to Savannah. Lay low. When I call you, come running. And bring the boy, Dante's son, my grandson." Candace took the envelope. She looked at the screen where Dante's face had been and then back at me. "He is going to pay," she said, her voice hard. "With interest," I assured her. She turned and walked out of the warehouse. She walked differently now. She walked like a woman with a mission. I watched her go. Dante had made a fatal error. He thought people were disposable. He thought he could use them and throw them away. He didn't realize that discarded things have a way of coming back to haunt you. I checked my watch. Phase 1 was complete. The eviction was public. The mistress was turned. Now it was time to turn up the heat on the public stage. Dante wanted attention. I was about to give him the kind of spotlight that burns. I dialed Strickland. "Is the interview set up?" I asked. "Yes, sir," Strickland replied. "Tomorrow night. Prime time." "Excellent," I said. "Get the tape ready. The one from the kitchen. It is ready, sir." I hung up and walked out of the warehouse, leaving the darkness behind me. Dante thought he was fighting for his life. He didn't know he was already dead. He just hadn't hit the ground yet. The warehouse was silent except for the low hum of the industrial cooling fans overhead. The air was thick with dust and the weight of a 2-year-old lie that was finally about to be dissected. I sat in my leather chair staring at Candace. She was still standing in the center of the concrete floor, clutching the envelope I had given her like a lifeline. Her eyes were red, but her chin was up. She was ready to talk, and I was ready to listen to the autopsy of my own life. "Tell me," I said, my voice echoing off the steel walls. "Tell me exactly what happened that night. Not the version you told your friends. Not the version Dante told me. The truth." Candace took a deep breath. She looked at the floor, then back at me. "I was there," she whispered. I frowned. "I know you were seeing him. I know he told you about it later." "No, Mr. Freeman," she interrupted, her voice gaining strength. "You do not understand. I was in the house. I was there when it happened." My hands tightened on the armrests of my chair. The police report said only 3 people were in the house. Me, Dante, Victoria. If Candace was there, it changed everything. It meant there was an eyewitness. "Where were you?" I asked. "Dante snuck me in around 6, Candace explained. "Victoria was supposed to be at a charity gala in Buckhead. You were in your study drinking your evening scotch. Dante brought me in through the garage. We were in the guest room downstairs. I listened, my blood running cold. My son had brought his mistress into my home while his wife was out and I was down the hall. The disrespect was visceral. Then we heard the front door open," Candace continued. "It was early. Victoria came home because she forgot her purse. Dante panicked. He shoved me into the hallway closet, the big one under the grand staircase. He told me to stay quiet no matter what." I leaned forward. "Go on." "I heard them arguing," Candace said. "It started small. Victoria found a receipt in his jacket pocket. A receipt for a bracelet he bought me. She started screaming. She was yelling that she knew he was cheating, that she was going to leave him and take half the money. I remembered the shouting. In my memory, it was a muffled noise like listening to a radio underwater. I had felt heavy that night. Unnaturally heavy. "She was threatening to expose him," Candace said. "She said she was going to tell you everything. She said you would cut him off if you knew how he was spending company funds on women." That was true. I would have. Dante knew my code. Infidelity was a weakness I did not tolerate, and theft was a sin I punished. "They moved out into the hallway," Candace said. "I was watching through the slats in the closet door. They were right in front of me. Victoria was running up the stairs trying to get away from him. She was crying. She said she was going to pack a bag. And then I asked. Dante chased her," Candace said. "He grabbed her arm halfway up the stairs. He was furious. He looked like a different person. He told her she wasn't going anywhere. He told her she wasn't going to ruin him." I closed my eyes, picturing the staircase, the marble steps, the iron railing. "She slapped him," Candace said. "It was a hard slap, and then she tried to pull away. She shouted that she was pregnant. She screamed it. She said, "I am carrying your child and I am leaving you." This was the part that had haunted me. The baby. The grandchild I never met. The life I was accused of extinguishing. Dante didn't care, Candace said. He laughed at her. He said he didn't want a baby with her. He said she was just a meal ticket. And then he did it. Did what I asked, my voice low. He pushed her. The words hung in the air. He didn't slip, Candace said firmly. He didn't try to grab her. He placed both hands on her shoulders and he shoved her backward with everything he had. I opened my eyes. I stared at the girl who had watched my daughter-in-law fall. She tumbled backward, Candace said, tears streaming down her face now. It was loud. Her head hit the railing. Then the steps. She rolled all the way down and landed on the marble floor right in front of the closet door. She wasn't moving. There was blood. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It wasn't an accident. It was attempted murder. My son had tried to kill his wife. Dante froze at the top of the stairs. Candace continued. He looked terrified. He thought she was dead. He started coming down, slowly shaking. And then the study door opened. That was me. "You came out," Candace said. "You looked stumbling. You were holding your glass, but you dropped it. You walked over to her. You knelt down. You were calling her name, but your words were slurring. You looked drunk, Mr. Freeman. Really drunk." "I wasn't drunk," I said. "I had one glass." "I know," Candace said. "Because earlier when we were in the guest room, Dante went to the kitchen. He told me he put something in your decanter. He said he needed you to sleep so he could sneak me out later. He crushed up 3 sleeping pills and put them in your scotch." Rage flared in my chest. A cold, sharp rage. I hadn't just been framed, I had been drugged. My own son had poisoned me to facilitate his affair, and that poison had made me the perfect scapegoat. "You were trying to help her," Candace said. "You were checking her pulse, you were trying to lift her head, but you were swaying. You couldn't focus." "And then what happened?" I asked. "Victoria woke up," Candace said. "She started moaning. She saw you hovering over her. She was confused. She was in pain. And then Dante was there." Candace paused, wiping her hands on her dress. "Dante looked at you kneeling there, confused and drugged. Then he looked at Victoria. And I saw the change in his eyes. He stopped being scared and started calculating. He knelt down beside you. He looked at Victoria and said, 'Dad did this. Dad was drunk. He pushed you.'" I slammed my fist onto the armrest. The audacity, the quick-thinking evil of it. He saw an opportunity to save his own skin, and he took it without hesitation. Victoria looked at him. Candace continued. She looked at Dante and she knew he was lying. I saw it in her face. She remembered him pushing her. But then she looked at you. Then she looked back at Dante. "And she made a choice," I said. "She made a choice," Candace agreed. "She realized that if Dante went to jail for assault, she would be the wife of a convict. She would lose the status. She would lose the money. But if you went to jail, if I went to jail, Dante got control, I finished." "Exactly," Candace said. She grabbed Dante's hand. She looked him in the eye and she nodded. She whispered, "Help me up." "They stood up together, leaving you on the floor," Candace said. "You were trying to stand, but you couldn't. You passed out right there next to the blood." Dante called the police. He was crying on the phone, screaming that his father had gone crazy, that you had killed his baby. I sat in silence, absorbing the full weight of the betrayal. It wasn't just Dante. It was a partnership, a conspiracy born in blood and sealed with a lie. They had looked at my unconscious body and decided I was worth more to them in a cage than as a father. "And you?" I asked, looking at Candace. "You were in the closet." "I was terrified," Candace said. "I thought if I came out he would kill me too. I stayed in there for 3 hours. The police came. The paramedics took Victoria. They handcuffed you and dragged you out. You were barely conscious." "When did you leave?" "After everyone was gone," Candace said. "Dante stayed behind to secure the house. He opened the closet door. He looked at me. He had my phone in his hand. He had taken it while I was hiding. He told me that if I ever told anyone what I saw, he would kill me." Candace said, her voice trembling. "He said he would pin it on me. He said he would tell the police I broke in and pushed her." Who would they believe? The grieving son or the mistress hiding in the closet? I nodded. It was a classic Dante move. Bully the weak to protect the strong. "So I ran," Candace said. "I ran and I never looked back. Until he called me yesterday asking for money. I stood up and walked over to her. 'You have proof?' I asked. Because a story is just a story in court. I need something that sticks. I need something that cuts. Candace reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small, shattered iPhone. The screen was spiderwebbed with cracks, but it looked intact. He smashed my phone before he let me go, Candace said. But he didn't know I had a backup cloud account. And he didn't know that while I was in the closet, I was texting him. I was begging him to stop hurting her. I sent him messages while they were arguing. She handed me the broken phone. But this isn't the proof, she said. This is just the device. The proof is on his phone. She reached into her other pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a printout of a screenshot. He texted me the next morning, she said. After you were booked. After the doctors confirmed the miscarriage, I took the paper. It was a text message time-stamped at 4:32 a.m. the morning after my arrest. It was from Dante. The text read, "Keep your mouth shut about the stairs." It worked. The old man is taking the fall. We are clear. If you say a word about me pushing her, I will make sure you disappear. Delete this. He told you to delete it, I said, looking up. I didn't, Candace said. I saved it, just in case. This is it, I said, my voice quiet. This is the nail in the coffin. This text message, combined with the testimony of an eyewitness, proved premeditation, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. It proved my innocence. And it proved their guilt. You did good, Candace, I said. You did very good. I am not doing it for you, she said, her eyes hard. I am doing it for my son. I don't want him to grow up with a father like that walking free. He won't walk free, I promised. He won't even crawl. I took the paper and the phone. I handed them to Strickland, who had stepped out of the shadows. Process these, I ordered. Get them authenticated. Get the metadata. I want this bulletproof. Yes, sir, Strickland said, taking the evidence with a reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. This changes the entire legal strategy. We are not just looking at a civil suit anymore. This is grounds for a retrial and criminal charges against them both. I looked back at Candace. Go to Savannah, I said. The car is waiting outside. Do not speak to anyone. Do not answer your phone. When I need you, I will send for you. She nodded, turning to leave. At the door, she stopped. Mr. Freeman, she said. Yes. He didn't just push her, she said. He smiled when he did it. The door closed behind her, leaving me in the cold silence of the warehouse. He smiled. My son smiled as he tried to murder his wife, and he smiled as he sent me to prison. I walked over to the table and poured myself a drink. Not scotch. Water. I needed a clear head. The gloves were off. They had taken my freedom, my reputation, and 2 years of my life. I wasn't just going to take their money. I was going to take their freedom. I picked up my phone. It was time for the next phase, the public opinion phase. Dante and Victoria were probably already trying to spin the eviction to the press. They were probably calling reporters playing the victim card. I needed to get ahead of the story. I dialed the number of the producer at Channel 8 News. This is Elijah Freeman, I said. I hear you are planning an interview with my son. Yes, Mr. Freeman, the producer said, sounding surprised. We are scheduled for tomorrow night live. He says you threw him out on the street without cause. I let out a short, dry laugh. I am sure he did. But I think your audience might be interested in a different perspective. What do you mean, the producer asked. I mean, I am buying the commercial slots during that interview, I said. All of them. And I have some content I would like to air. There was a silence on the line. You want to buy the ad space during your son's interview. I want to buy the network if I have to, I said. But for now, the ad space will do. And I want to be in the studio, in the shadows. I want to see his face when the truth comes out. Mr. Freeman, that is highly irregular. So is framing your father for assault, I countered. Do we have a deal? I could hear the greed in the producer's voice. The ratings would be astronomical. We have a deal, Mr. Freeman. Excellent, I said. I hung up. Dante wanted to be a star. He wanted the world to see him. Tomorrow night he would get his wish. But the script was about to change, and the ending was going to be a tragedy. The 60-inch television screen in my hotel suite was bright with the image of a crying woman. It was Victoria. She was sitting on a beige couch in the studio of the Morning Atlanta show, clutching a tissue like it was a lifeline. The host, a woman known for her soft questions and sympathetic nods, leaned in close. Tell us, Victoria, the host said, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. What was it like living with Elijah Freeman? Victoria sniffled and looked directly into the camera. Her eyes were red-rimmed, perfect for high definition. It was terrifying, she whispered. He is a powerful man. He controls everything in this city. He used his money to silence us. He threatened to cut Dante off if we ever told the truth about his temper. He is a tyrant. He hates that Dante married me. He never accepted me because I am white. He called me trash. He pushed me down those stairs because he wanted to get rid of his son's mistake. I watched as the lower third of the screen flashed the headline, "Freeman Family Horror, a Daughter-in-Law Speaks Out." I took a sip of my coffee, black, no sugar. My hand did not shake. The host shook her head in disgust. "And now he has evicted you." "Yes," Victoria sobbed. "He threw us on the street. He left us with nothing just to punish us. We are staying in a motel. We are afraid for our lives." The segment ended and the commercials began. I picked up my tablet and scrolled through social media. The court of public opinion was in session and the verdict was guilty. Hashtags were trending. Justice for Victoria. Boycott Freeman Logistics. Lock him up. People who didn't know me were calling for my head. They saw a rich, angry old black man bullying a young white woman and they made up their minds. Strickland was pacing the floor of my suite wearing a hole in the carpet. He looked pale. "Mr. Freeman, this is a disaster," Strickland said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "The stock for the holding company is taking a hit. 2 major shipping partners have called asking for a statement. We need to hold a press conference. We need to deny this immediately. We need to show them the eviction notice was legal." I set the tablet down on the coffee table. "No press conference," I said, my voice calm. "Sir, with all due respect," Strickland argued, "you are losing the narrative. Silence looks like guilt. If we don't say something today, this will become the truth. Victoria is good at this. She is playing the victim card perfectly." I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the ants scurrying on the pavement below. "I don't argue with liars, Strickland," I said. "When you argue, you validate them. You bring yourself down to their level. I don't need to tell people who I am. I need to show them who she is." "But how?" Strickland asked. "She is on every channel. Dante is scheduled for the primetime interview tonight with Rick Reynolds. That is the biggest slot in the state. Millions of people will be watching. Dante is going to bury you." I turned from the window. "Who owns the station?" I asked. Strickland blinked, confused by the pivot. "WXL. It is owned by Media One Group, a conglomerate based in Chicago. And their stock price?" I asked. "It has been down for 2 quarters, Strickland said, his lawyer brain catching up. "They are leveraged heavily in streaming and failing." "Buy it," I said. Strickland froze. "Buy the station. Buy the controlling stake in the local affiliate," I corrected. "Or buy enough of the parent company to get a seat at the table. Do it now. Use the offshore funds. I want to be the boss by 5 o'clock. Strickland stared at me for a moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. "That will cost a fortune, sir." "Freedom costs a fortune, Strickland. Revenge is priceless. Get it done." Strickland rushed out of the room, phone already to his ear. I sat back down and looked at the TV where Victoria's face was frozen on a replay. "You want to be famous, Victoria?" I said to the empty room. "I am going to make you famous." I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a small digital recorder. It was old, scuffed plastic, but it held dynamite. It wasn't from the recent surveillance. It was from 3 years ago. Before I went to prison, I had a housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, a quiet woman in her 60s who had worked for me for a decade. She was invisible to Dante and Victoria. They treated her like furniture. They talked in front of her like she was deaf. But Mrs. Gable heard everything, and she was loyal. 2 days before my arrest, Mrs. Gable had come to me. She handed me this recorder. She said, "Mr. Freeman, you need to hear how they talk when you are at the office." I hadn't listened to it then. I was too arrogant, too sure of my place. I listened to it in prison when my lawyer brought it to me in discovery. It was inadmissible in court because of consent laws, but the court of public opinion has different rules. I pressed play. Victoria's voice, tinny but unmistakable, filled the room. "I hate this house. I hate the smell of it. It smells like old people and cheap cooking." Then Dante's voice. "Just be patient, babe. He can't live forever." Then Victoria again, the voice that would end her. "I don't care if he lives or dies, Dante. I just want the money. I want to get out of this city and away from these people. I am sick of pretending to like them. Look at them. They are so desperate for acceptance. Pathetic. Just a bunch of poor black fools playing dress-up in big houses. I just need the old man's checkbook. Once we have that, we can leave this trash heap behind." I stopped the tape. Poor black fools. That was the line. That was the kill shot. Victoria had played the race card perfectly on TV, positioning herself as the outsider in a black family. But this tape showed her true heart. She wasn't a victim. She was a racist gold digger who despised the very community she was begging for sympathy. The Atlanta audience was 60% African American. Rick Reynolds, the host of tonight's interview, was a black man who prided himself on community uplift. When they heard this, Victoria wouldn't just be hated. She would be exiled. I put the recorder in my pocket. It was time to go to the studio. The WXL studio was buzzing with energy. It was 8 p.m. Dante and Victoria were in the green room getting makeup done. They didn't know I was in the building. They didn't know that 15 minutes ago, the board of Media One had accepted a massive injection of capital from a private equity firm I controlled, giving me executive producer privileges for the night. I stood in the control booth looking down at the set. Rick Reynolds sat at the glass desk adjusting his tie. He looked serious, ready to conduct the interview of the year. The director, a nervous man named Dave, looked at me. "Mr. Freeman, are you sure about this?" Dave asked. "This is highly irregular. If we hijack the feed, we could face FCC complaints." I looked at Dave. "I own the feed, Dave, and I am telling you to run the audio file I gave you when I give the signal. If you don't, you can pack your desk." Dave swallowed hard and nodded, turning back to his console. On the floor, Dante and Victoria were let out. Dante looked sharp in a navy suit I had bought him 3 Christmases ago. Victoria was wearing black now, the grieving survivor. They held hands as they sat down. The on-air light turned red. "Good evening, Atlanta," Rick Reynolds said, his deep voice smooth as velvet. "Tonight we have an exclusive. The son and daughter-in-law of transport mogul Elijah Freeman are here to tell their side of a story that has gripped our city." I watched the monitors. Dante looked confident. He leaned forward, engaging the camera. "Thank you for having us," Rick Dante said. "It has been a nightmare. My father, he is not the man he used to be. Prison changed him. He is vindictive. He is dangerous." Victoria wiped a tear. "We just want him to get help, but he threw us out. He left us with nothing." Rick nodded sympathetically. "That must be incredibly difficult. The allegations of abuse, Victoria, are they true?" Victoria looked down, playing the shy victim. "Yes. He has always been aggressive. He doesn't like that Dante chose me. He wanted him to marry someone different, someone from his own world. She was implying I was the racist. She was painting me as a bigot who hated her because she was white. It was a bold move." Rick frowned. "So you feel this is racially motivated?" "Absolutely," Dante interjected. "My father is old school. He doesn't believe in mixed marriages. He has made comments, terrible comments." I pressed the intercom button in the control booth. "Now," I said. Dave hesitated for a fraction of a second, then hit the button. On the live feed, the audio cut out. Dante's mouth kept moving, but no sound came out. He tapped his microphone, confused. Then the sound of static hissed through the studio speakers and into millions of homes. And then Victoria's voice, loud and clear. "I am sick of pretending to like them. Look at them. They are so desperate for acceptance. Pathetic. Just a bunch of poor black fools playing dress-up in big houses." Dante froze. His eyes went wide. Victoria gasped, looking around wildly. "What is that? Turn it off." But the tape kept rolling. "I just need the old man's checkbook. Once we have that, we can leave this trash heap behind." The silence in the studio was absolute. Rick Reynolds sat frozen, his face hardening into a mask of pure fury. He looked at Victoria not as a guest, but as an enemy. The audio ended. The live feed returned to normal sound. Victoria stood up, knocking her chair over. "That is fake. That is AI. I never said that." Dante looked at the camera, then at Rick, then at Victoria. He knew it wasn't fake. He remembered that conversation. It was in the kitchen 3 years ago. Rick Reynolds slowly removed his earpiece. He placed his hands on the desk. "Poor black fools," Rick repeated, his voice icy. "Is that what you think of us, Victoria? Is that what you think of this city? Of the people watching you right now?" "No," Victoria screamed. "No. It is a lie. Elijah did this. He is manipulating you." I stepped out of the shadows of the control booth and walked onto the balcony overlooking the studio floor. The stage lights caught me. Dante looked up and saw me. "Dad," he whispered. I looked down at them like a god looking at insects. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The tape had said everything. Rick Reynolds looked up at me, then back at Dante. "I think this interview is over," Rick said. "Cut the feed." The screens went black, but the damage was done. It was live. It was out there. Victoria was hyperventilating, grabbing Dante's lapels. "You have to fix this, Dante. Do something." Dante pushed her away. "Get off me. You stupid. You said that. I told you to be careful." Security, Rick barked. "Get them out of my studio, now!" Two large guards stepped onto the set. They grabbed Dante and Victoria by the arms. "Wait!" Dante shouted as he was dragged away. "My father set me up. He owns this place. Look at him." I stood on the balcony watching them get hauled out the back exit. I pulled out my phone. My social media feed was refreshing so fast it was a blur. The hashtag #Justice for Victoria had vanished. In its place, a new one was trending. Victoria the racist. People were posting the clip. They were dissecting her voice. They were canceling her. Strickland walked into the booth beside me. "The stock price for the station just spiked, sir," Strickland said, checking his phone. Ratings were through the roof. "Good," I said. "Sell it in the morning." I made my point. I looked down at the empty chairs on the set. Victoria's career as a victim was over. She was a pariah now. No one would hire her. No one would believe her. She couldn't walk down the street in Atlanta without being spit on. And Dante. He was guilty by association. He stood by and let her say those things. He was finished. Phase 2 complete. I turned to leave the booth. "Now for the final blow," I said. "The child." Strickland nodded. "Candace is ready, sir. She is at the hotel with the boy." "Let's go," I said. "It is time to introduce Dante to his son. And time to take away the only thing he has left." I walked out of the studio, the sound of chaos fading behind me. My son wanted a war. I just dropped a nuclear bomb. And I was just getting started. The fallout from the television interview was nuclear, but I did not give them time to find shelter. The next morning I summoned Dante and Victoria to the conference room of the Four Seasons. They arrived looking like ghosts. Dante was unshaven, wearing the same suit from the night before, which now looked slept in. Victoria wore dark sunglasses to hide her swollen eyes, but she could not hide the trembling of her hands. They came because they had no choice. I still held the purse strings, and they were starving for a crumb of mercy. "Sit down," I said, pointing to the chairs on the opposite side of the long glass table. They sat. They didn't look at each other. The unity of their conspiracy had shattered the moment the world heard Victoria's racist rant. Now they were just two drowning people trying not to pull each other down. "What is this about, Dad?" Dante asked, his voice hoarse. "If this is about the interview, I can explain. It was taken out of context. I ignored him. I checked my watch. 10 a.m. The door to the conference room opened. Strickland walked in. But he was not alone. Behind him was Candace, and in her arms she held a boy. The child was small, with curly hair and skin the color of cafe au lait. He was clinging to Candace, looking around the room with wide, curious eyes. He was wearing a little blue polo shirt and crisp khaki shorts. Dante stopped breathing. I saw the air leave his lungs in a rush. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles turning white. Victoria took off her sunglasses slowly, her mouth falling open in a silent scream of recognition. "Everyone meet Leo," I said, my voice calm. Candace walked over and sat in the chair next to me. She bounced the boy on her knee. He looked at me, and for a second I felt something thaw in my chest. He had my nose. There was no denying it. He had the Freeman nose. "What is she doing here?" Dante whispered. "She is here to introduce you to your son," I said. Victoria stood up, knocking her chair back. "This is a lie. That kid could belong to anyone. She is a grifter, Dante. Do not look at her." Dante didn't listen. He was staring at the boy. He was staring at his own face, reflected in a 2-year-old child. "Is he?" Dante asked Candace. "Is he mine?" Candace looked at him with cold indifference. "You know he is, Dante. You stopped paying for his formula 6 months ago to buy Victoria a new purse. Do not pretend you do not know him." Dante looked down, shame washing over him in a visible wave. "Why does this matter?" Victoria shrieked. "So he has a bastard child. So what? We are married. I am his wife. That child is illegitimate." "He has no rights." I leaned forward, clasping my hands on the table. Actually, Victoria, he has all the rights. I motioned to Strickland. He slid a document across the table toward them. It was a copy of my original will, the one I wrote 20 years ago, the one that established the family trust. Read paragraph 4, I commanded. Dante picked up the paper. His eyes scanned the legal text. He stopped. He read it again. His face went gray. What does it say? Victoria demanded, snatching the paper from him. It says, Dante whispered, that the primary beneficiary of the Freeman family trust must be a biological male heir of the Freeman bloodline. It says that if I have a son, the bulk of the estate bypasses me and is held in trust for him until he turns 21. Victoria froze. She looked at the paper, then at the boy, then at me. That means she stammered. It means I said that if this boy is Dante's son, Dante gets nothing. The allowance, the inheritance, the control of the company, it all goes to Leo. Dante becomes a trustee with no power, a figurehead. And you, Victoria, you get absolutely nothing because you are not a blood Freeman. The silence in the room was heavy. This was the checkmate they never saw coming. They had been fighting for the money, waiting for me to die. But the existence of this child rendered their wait useless. Even if I died tomorrow, the money would skip Dante and go to the boy. Victoria turned on Dante. Her eyes were wild, feral. You idiot, she screamed. You ruined everything. You slept with this trash, and now her brat is going to take my money. Your money, Dante shouted back, finding his voice. It was never your money, Victoria. And do not talk about my son like that. Oh, now he is your son. Victoria laughed, a manic sound. 5 minutes ago, he was a secret. Now you are father of the year because you realized you are broke. We can fix this, Dante said, grabbing Victoria's arm. We can have our own son. We can challenge the trust. We just need to get pregnant. If we have a legitimate child, the court will favor us. Victoria pulled her arm away violently. She backed away from him, shaking her head. We can't, she whispered. What do you mean we can't? Dante asked. We have been trying. We just need to try harder. No, Dante, Victoria yelled, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. We cannot have a baby. I cannot have a baby. Dante frowned. Why not? The doctor said you were fine after the miscarriage. The doctor lied. Victoria confessed, her voice breaking. Or I lied to the doctor. It doesn't matter. That night, Dante, the night you pushed me down the stairs, the room went deadly silent. The damage was internal. Victoria sobbed. My uterus was ruptured. They had to perform emergency surgery to save my life while you were busy framing your father. They removed it, Dante. They did a hysterectomy. I have been sterile for 2 years. Dante stared at her, his mouth agape. You never told me. How could I? Victoria screamed. You wanted an heir. You are obsessed with your legacy. I knew if I told you that I was broken, you would leave me. You would go back to her. She pointed a shaking finger at Candace. So I lied. I faked the ovulation tests. I faked the hope. I let you believe we had a future because I needed you to stay until we got the money. She collapsed into her chair, burying her face in her hands. I looked at them. The betrayal was absolute. Dante had killed his wife's ability to conceive, and she had lied to him about it to keep him tethered to her greed. They were a match made in hell. So that is it, Dante said, his voice hollow. It is over. Not yet, I said. I pressed a button on the intercom. Send them in. 2 men in white lab coats entered the room carrying a medical kit. What is this? Dante asked. Verification, I said. We are going to settle this right now. I am not taking anyone's word for anything ever again. We are doing a DNA test, here, now, in front of witnesses. I don't need a test, Dante said, looking at Leo. I know he is mine. Look at him, Dad. He looks just like I did. I don't care what he looks like, I said coldly. I care what the science says. Open your mouth. The technicians swabbed Dante's cheek. Then they swabbed Leo's. Candace held the boy calm and steady. She looked at Victoria with a mixture of pity and triumph. I paid for the expedited rapid analysis, I said. We will have the results in 1 hour. Sit tight. The next hour was the longest of Dante's life. He sat there staring at the boy, trying to catch his eye. Leo ignored him, playing with a toy truck on the floor. Victoria sat in silence, staring out the window, a woman who realized she had gambled her fertility and her soul for a payout that was never coming. Finally, the tablet pinged. The lead technician looked at the screen and nodded. He handed the tablet to Strickland. Strickland reviewed it and placed it in front of me. Probability of paternity 99.99%, Strickland announced. I looked at the screen. It was official. I had a grandson. A true heir. A future. I stood up and walked over to Leo. I knelt down. He looked up at me and smiled. He didn't know I was rich. He didn't know I was powerful. He just saw an old man smiling at him. "Hello, Leo," I said softly. "I am your grandfather." Dante stood up too, hope flaring in his eyes. "See, Dad," he said. "He is a freeman. This changes things. I am his father. I have rights. If the money goes to him, I control it until he is of age. That is the law. I am his legal guardian." He looked at Victoria. "We can raise him, babe. We can adopt him, or take custody. Candace is unfit. She has a record. We can take the boy and the trust comes with him." Victoria looked up, the gears in her head turning. She wiped her face. "You are right," she said, her voice gaining strength. "We can provide a stable home. A two-parent household. The courts will prefer us. They were doing it again, right in front of me, plotting to use a human being as a wallet. They saw this innocent child not as a gift, but as a key to a vault." I stood up and faced my son. "You are mistaken, Dante," I said. "What do you mean?" Dante asked. "I am his father." "Biologically, yes," I said. "But that is where it ends." I walked back to the head of the table. I anticipated this moment. I anticipated that you would try to use this boy just like you used me. So I took precautions. I pulled another file from my briefcase. "This is a petition for emergency custody," I said. "It was filed 10 minutes ago by Strickland's team. It petitions the court to grant sole custody of Leo to his mother Candace with me as the court-appointed guardian ad litem and financial trustee." "You can't do that," Dante shouted. "I will fight you. On what grounds?" I asked. "I am his father," Dante repeated. "And you are a gambling addict," I said, dropping the bomb I had been saving. Dante froze. "I bought your debt, Dante. Just like I bought the house. I know about the underground poker games in Buckhead. I know about the bookie in Decatur you owe $80,000 to. I know you stole my wife's jewelry to pay the interest." Victoria gasped. "You stole your mother's jewelry. You told me we were robbed." I ignored her. "I have sworn affidavits from 3 casino managers and your bookie. I have bank statements showing cash withdrawals that match the betting lines. You are an addict, Dante, and you are broke. No judge in this state will give a child to a broke gambling addict living in a motel, especially when the alternative is a wealthy grandfather with a clean record and the resources to give the boy the world." Dante looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Dad, please. He is all I have left." "You don't want him," I said, my voice filled with disgust. "You want what he comes with. You want the trust fund." I turned to Candace. "Take the boy," I said. "Go back to the hotel. We are done here." Candace picked up Leo. She looked at Dante one last time. "You had your chance, Dante," she said. "You chose the money. Now you have neither." She walked out. Dante collapsed into his chair, head in his hands. Victoria stared at him with pure venom. "You are worthless," she hissed. "You are absolutely worthless." I gathered my papers. "I am accepting my grandson Dante," I said. "He is a freeman. He will be raised with honor. He will be raised to work hard. He will be raised to tell the truth. But I am not accepting you. You lost your right to be a freeman the night you framed me." I walked to the door. "Strickland, show them out, and make sure they don't take the pens." I left them there in the conference room, broken and turning on each other. I had the boy. I had the truth. And now I had the legal leverage to ensure Dante never touched a dime of the family fortune again. But Dante was a cornered rat, and rats bite when they are trapped. I knew he wouldn't give up. He would try to fight for custody, not because he loved the boy, but because he needed the money. Let him try. I was ready for war. And I had ammunition he didn't even know existed. The Fulton County Courthouse smelled of floor wax and desperation. It was a smell I had grown accustomed to over the last 2 years. But today, I was walking through the metal detectors not as a defendant, but as a guardian. I adjusted my silk tie and checked my watch. 9 in the morning. The battle for the soul of my grandson was about to begin. Dante and Victoria were already there, sitting on a wooden bench outside the family courtroom. They looked like a picture from a magazine. Dante had shaved and found a suit that wasn't wrinkled. Victoria was wearing a modest blue dress with a high collar, looking every inch the devoted mother figure. It was a costume. I knew it. They knew it. But they were hoping the judge would be blind. When they saw me, Dante stood up. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked hungry. It was a look I recognized from the nights he used to beg for money to cover his mistakes. "Dad," Dante said, stepping into my path, "we don't have to do this in there. We can settle. Just sign over the trust management to me, and I will let you have visitation. I will let you see him on weekends." I stopped and looked at him. He was actually trying to negotiate. He thought he had leverage. He thought that because his DNA was inside that little boy, he owned him. "You are confused, son," I said, my voice low so the passing bailiffs wouldn't hear. "I am not here to visit. I am here to rescue that boy from you, and I am not negotiating with a hostage taker." Victoria stood up, her eyes flashing. She wasn't wearing her sunglasses today. Her eyes looked glassy, too bright. "He is Dante's son," she hissed. "The law favors the biological father. You are just a grandfather with a criminal record. No judge is going to give a baby to an ex-con over his own father." She had a point, or she would have if I were just any ex-con. But I was Elijah Freeman, and I came prepared for war. We walked into the courtroom. Candace was already there, sitting on the left side holding Leo. She looked terrified. She knew that Dante had hired a lawyer who specialized in father's rights, a man named Verify who was known for playing dirty. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Harrison walked in. She was a stern black woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose. I knew her reputation. She didn't tolerate nonsense, and she hated liars. Dante's lawyer stood up first. He was a small man with a loud voice. He painted a beautiful picture. He talked about how Dante was a loving father who had been denied access to his child. He talked about how Victoria was ready to be a mother to the boy, despite the circumstances. He talked about the stability of a two-parent home. Then he turned his finger toward me. "Your Honor," he boomed, "the maternal figure in this child's life is a woman with a criminal history, and the man seeking guardianship, the grandfather, is a convicted felon who just served 2 years for aggravated assault against a woman. Is this the environment we want for a child? A home filled with violence and instability?" It was a good speech. Dante nodded along, looking solemn. Victoria dabbed at her dry eyes with a handkerchief. Then it was Strickland's turn. My attorney stood up slowly. He didn't boom. He didn't point fingers. He just picked up a thick binder and walked to the podium. "Your Honor," Strickland said, his voice calm and precise, "we are not here to debate the past of Mr. Freeman, which is currently under appeal. We are here to discuss the present fitness of the biological father and his wife." Dante's lawyer objected, but the judge waved him down. Strickland opened the binder. "We concede that Mr. Dante Freeman is the biological father," Strickland said. "However, biology does not equate to capability. We have evidence that suggests placing a child in the care of Dante and Victoria Freeman would be not only irresponsible but dangerous." Dante shifted in his seat. Victoria stopped dabbing her eyes. Strickland pulled out a stack of documents. "Exhibit A," Strickland announced. "Financial records from the Riverboat Casino, the underground Buckhead Poker Club, and 3 online betting platforms." Dante went rigid. "These records show a pattern of compulsive gambling spanning 5 years," Strickland continued. "In the last 12 months alone, Mr. Dante Freeman has lost over $200,000. He has drained his savings, maxed out credit cards, and as of last week, has 0 liquid assets. He is destitute, Your Honor. He cannot feed himself, let alone a child." Dante's lawyer jumped up. "Objection relevance. Financial status is not a crime." "It is when you steal to support it," Strickland countered. "We have affidavits from jewelry stores where Mr. Freeman pawned family heirlooms reported stolen. We have evidence of him forging his father's signature on loan applications. This is not just poverty. This is addiction." The judge looked at Dante. Her eyes were cold. "Is this true, Mr. Freeman?" Dante stammered. I had some bad luck. I am a businessman. High risk, high reward." Strickland didn't let up. He turned the page. And then there is the matter of the home environment, Strickland said. Exhibit B. He pulled out a medical file. This is the medical history of Mrs. Victoria Freeman. Victoria gasped. Her hand went to her throat. That is private. You can't use that. We obtained these through a court order regarding the safety of the minor, Strickland said. Following her alleged fall down the stairs 2 years ago, Mrs. Freeman was prescribed opioids for pain management. He held up a pharmacy log. According to these records, she has refilled that prescription 40 times in 24 months. She has shopped at 6 different doctors to maintain a supply of OxyContin and Vicodin. Strickland looked at Victoria, who was now shaking visibly. We also have a toxicology report from a hair follicle test performed on a hair sample recovered from her hairbrush during the eviction. It shows chronic high-level usage. Mrs. Freeman is not just a supportive wife, Your Honor. She is a functioning addict living in a state of constant impairment. The courtroom was silent. The image of the perfect couple had shattered. Dante was a broke gambler. Victoria was a pill addict. Strickland closed the binder. Your Honor, Dante Freeman does not want this child. He wants the trust fund that activates when he has custody. He needs the money to pay his bookies, and Victoria Freeman needs the money to buy her pills. They look at this boy and they see a paycheck. Elijah Freeman looks at this boy and sees a grandson. Dante jumped up, knocking his chair over. That is a lie. I love my son. You can't prove any of that. Sit down, Mr. Freeman, the judge barked. Dante sat breathing heavily. He looked at me. His eyes were full of hate, but there was fear there too. He knew he was losing. The judge reviewed the documents for a long 10 minutes. The silence stretched out like a rubber band about to snap. Based on the evidence presented, the judge finally said, I am granting temporary sole custody to the mother, Candace Williams. Mr. Elijah Freeman is appointed as the guardian ad litem and financial trustee. Mr. and Mrs. Dante Freeman are granted supervised visitation once a month pending the completion of a rehabilitation program for substance abuse and gambling addiction. It was a total victory. Dante put his head in his hands. Victoria stared at the wall, her face blank. She was probably wondering where she was going to get her next fix now that the money was truly gone. We walked out of the courtroom. Candace was crying tears of relief, holding Leo tight. Strickland looked satisfied. I told Candace to take the boy to the car. I had one more piece of business to attend to. I waited on the courthouse steps. 5 minutes later, Dante came out. He was alone. Victoria had probably run to the bathroom or the nearest pharmacy. Dante looked defeated. His suit didn't look so sharp anymore. He saw me and stopped. You happy, Dad? He asked, his voice bitter. You ruined me. You told the world I am a junkie and a loser. Are you happy now? I walked down the steps until I was standing one step above him. I wanted him to look up at me. I am not happy, Dante, I said. I am disappointed. I gave you everything, and you threw it away on cards and lies. I will get him back, Dante said, trying to summon some bravado. I will go to rehab. I will fix this, and then I will come for my son. I laughed. It was a cold sound. You don't have time for rehab, Dante. What do you mean? He asked. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was thick, expensive paper. Do you know who Big Sal is? I asked. Dante's face went white. The color drained out of him so fast I thought he might faint. Big Sal was a loan shark, the kind of man who didn't send letters, he sent guys with baseball bats. How do you know that name? Dante whispered. Because I do my research, I said. You owe him $500,000, Dante, the principal plus interest. You borrowed it 3 months ago to try and cover your losses before I got out of prison. You thought you could pay him back with my money once you had me committed. Dante was shaking now. He looked around as if Big Sal might be hiding in the bushes. He is going to kill me, Dante said, his voice trembling. If I don't pay him by Friday, he said he would break my legs. I unfolded the paper. It was a promissory note. The original note Dante had signed with Big Sal. He won't touch you, I said. Dante looked at the paper. Why? Because I paid him, I said. Dante looked up at me, hope flooding his face. You paid him. Dad, you paid him. Thank you. I knew you still cared. I knew you wouldn't let me get hurt. I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. I didn't pay him for you, Dante. I bought the debt. I held the paper up. I bought your debt for 50 cents on the dollar. Sal was happy to get the cash without the hassle of breaking your legs. He signed the note over to me. I leaned in close. I am your creditor now, Dante. I am the shark. You owe me $500,000, plus interest. And unlike Sal, I don't want your legs, I want your submission. Dante stared at me, horror dawning in his eyes. What do you want? He asked. I want you to sign a document, I said. A document relinquishing all parental rights to Leo, permanently. You sign that paper and this debt goes away. You walk away free, broke but free. And if I don't, Dante asked. If you don't, I will enforce this note, I said. I will garnish every paycheck you ever earn. I will seize any asset you ever acquire. I will make sure you never own anything more than the shirt on your back. I will chase you until the day you die, and I will still fight you for the boy in court every single day until you are buried under legal fees. Dante looked at the paper, then at me. He was trapped. He had no money. He had no wife worth keeping. He had no future. I will have Strickland draw up the papers, I said. You have 24 hours. I tucked the note back into my pocket and walked past him. Dad, he called out. I stopped. How can you do this to your own son? I turned back. My son died 2 years ago, I said. You are just the man who owes me money. I walked to the Bentley where Strickland was waiting. The engine purred to life. I looked out the window as we drove away. Dante was sitting on the courthouse steps, head in his hands, alone. He had a choice to make, money or fatherhood. But I knew what he would choose. Men like Dante always choose the easy way out. He would sign the papers. He would sell his son just like he sold his father. And when he did, I would have everything. I would have the boy. I would have the peace of mind. And Dante would have nothing but a clean slate and a lifetime of regret. But I wasn't done with Victoria. She was the one who pushed him. She was the one who lied to the police. She was the one who poisoned my scotch. Dante was broken. Victoria needed to be obliterated. I pulled out my phone. Strickland, I said. Yes, sir. Where is Victoria now? She is at a pharmacy on Peachtree, sir, trying to refill a prescription. Good, I said. Send the video to her phone. Which video, sir? The one from the warehouse. The one where Dante admits he wants to get rid of her to be with Candace. Strickland chuckled. That will cause some friction, sir. That is the point, I said. Divide and conquer. I leaned back. The war was almost over. Just one more battle, and this one was going to be personal. The Starlight Motel parking lot became the stage for Victoria's final humiliation. It was Tuesday morning. The air was thick with humidity and the smell of exhaust fumes. I watched from the tinted window of my Bentley parked across the street as the repo man hooked the chains onto the bumper of the white Porsche. That car had been her pride. It was the symbol of the status she had stolen from me. She used to drive it through Buckhead like she owned the city, wearing sunglasses that cost more than most people's rent. Now she was screaming at a man in a grease-stained jumpsuit while wearing sweatpants and flip-flops. "Don't touch it," she shrieked, clawing at the tow truck driver's arm. "You cannot take this. My father-in-law pays the lease. Call him. There is a mistake." The driver didn't even look at her. He just kept cranking the winch. "Lady, the lease has been in default for 60 days. The order came through yesterday. Step back or I am calling the cops." Victoria fell back onto the dirty asphalt, watching as the car was lifted into the air. It was the last remnant of her fake life being dragged away. Dante wasn't even there to help her. He was inside the motel room, probably passed out from a night of cheap liquor and self-pity. I signaled Strickland to drive on. I didn't need to see anymore. The car was just metal and rubber. The real destruction was happening inside her head. Victoria was a social climber. Her oxygen was attention and validation. Without the car, without the house, and with the viral video of her racist rant circulating online, she was suffocating. My private investigator sent me the report an hour later. Victoria had tried to go to her hair salon on Peachtree Street, the one where she spent $500 a week. They wouldn't let her in the door. The owner told her that her credit card was declined and that other clients were uncomfortable with her presence. She had tried to go to her country club for lunch. Her membership had been revoked by the board, citing a violation of the code of conduct. She was toxic, she was radioactive, and she was broke. When she returned to the motel room, she found Dante sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. He hadn't showered in 3 days. He looked at her and asked if she had managed to get any cash. That was the moment it happened. I wasn't there, but I knew Victoria. I knew how her mind worked. She looked at Dante, and she didn't see a husband or a partner. She saw an anchor dragging her down to the bottom of the ocean. She realized the ship had sunk and she was the only one with a life vest if she was willing to use it. My phone rang at 4 in the afternoon. It was a blocked number. I answered. "Hello, Victoria," I said before she could speak. There was a pause, a hesitation. "I can give him to you," she whispered. Her voice was trembling, but there was a steel edge to it. "I can give you Dante." I leaned back in my leather chair. "I am listening. I know what you want, Elijah. You want to clear your name. You want the assault charge erased. You want the world to know you didn't push me down those stairs." I waited. "I will tell them," she said. "I will go to the district attorney. I will sign a sworn affidavit. I will tell them Dante pushed me. I will tell them he forced me to lie. I will tell them everything." "And what do you want in return?" I asked, my voice flat. $500,000, she said quickly. "Cash, and a one-way ticket to Paris. First class." I almost laughed. She was destitute, living in a motel with bugs, and she was still demanding first class. "That is a high price for the truth, Victoria," I said. "It is a bargain," she countered. "Without my testimony, you are still a felon in the eyes of the law. You might have money, but you have a record. I can wipe that clean. I am the victim, Elijah. If the victim says she lied, the case reopens. Dante goes to prison for assault and perjury. You get your reputation back." She was right. Her testimony was the key to a full exoneration. The evidence from Candace was strong, but Victoria's confession would be the final nail. "Meet me," I said. "Where?" she asked. "Centennial Olympic Park. The benches near the fountain. 1 hour. Come alone." "I will be there," she said. "Bring the money." I hung up. I sat there for a moment looking at the phone. She was selling her husband for $500,000. She was willing to send the father of the child she claimed to want to prison, just so she could go shopping in Paris. It was despicable. It was cold. It was exactly what I expected. I stood up and straightened my jacket. "Strickland, get the car," I said. "And bring the audio equipment, the long-range Bluetooth set." "We are going to the park?" Strickland asked. "Yes," I said, "but first I need to make a phone call." I dialed Dante's number. He answered on the second ring. "Dad," he said, his voice slurred. "Dad, please tell me you are calling to help." They took the car. "Dad, Victoria is losing it." "I am not calling to help Dante," I said. "I am calling to help you hear something." "What?" Dante asked, confused. "Keep your phone on," I said. "Don't speak. Just listen. I am going to connect you to my headset. You need to hear what your wife is up to," my wife Dante said. "She is at the pharmacy. She went to get headache medicine." "Is she?" I asked. "Just listen, son, and learn." I connected the call to my earpiece, leaving the line open. Dante was now a silent passenger in my ear, able to hear everything I heard. I arrived at the park as the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the pavement. The fountain was dancing, shooting jets of water into the air. It was a beautiful evening for a betrayal. Victoria was sitting on a bench near the edge of the park. She was wearing a trench coat and dark glasses, trying to look incognito, but she just looked suspicious. She was clutching her purse tight to her chest. I walked over and sat on the other end of the bench, leaving 3 feet of space between us. "You came," she said, turning to me. "Do you have it?" I tapped my briefcase. "I have the means, Victoria, but first I need to hear it. I need to hear you say it." Victoria looked around nervously, checking for police, checking for Dante. "He pushed me," she said, her voice low, and hurried. "That night on the stairs. He found out I knew about the cheating. We were arguing. I told him I was going to leave him. He grabbed me. I slapped him. Then he shoved me." I nodded slowly. "And the baby?" I asked. "There was no baby," she said. "I mean, there was a pregnancy, but I lost it when I hit the floor. The doctor told me later that the trauma caused it, but we used it. Dante said we could use it to put you away. He said if we blamed you, we would get control of the company." I could hear Dante's breathing in my earpiece. It was ragged, heavy. He was listening to his wife confess to framing his father. He was listening to her admit there was no baby left to save. "So, you lied to the police," I said, prompting her. "You lied to the judge." "Yes," Victoria hissed. "Yes, I lied. Dante made me do it. He said he would kill me if I didn't. He is a monster, Elijah. He is violent." She was playing the victim again, shifting the blame entirely to Dante. And now I asked, "Why come to me now?" "Because he is a loser," she spat. "He has no money. He has no future. I wasted 3 years of my life on him. I deserve compensation. I deserve a fresh start." I heard a sound in my ear, a car door slamming. Dante wasn't just listening anymore, he was moving. "Where are you, Dante?" I whispered, barely moving my lips. "I am close!" His voice came back through the earpiece, distorted and filled with rage. I tracked her phone. "I am at the north entrance." The north entrance was only 50 yards away. "So the deal is this," I said to Victoria, raising my voice slightly to ensure the microphone picked it up clearly. "I give you $500,000 and you testify against Dante. You send him to prison for 10 years. "Yes," she said eagerly. "Give me the money and I will sing like a bird. I will tell them he beats me. I will tell them he has a gambling problem. I will tell them whatever you want. I just want him gone. I hate him, Elijah. I have hated him for years. He is weak. He is pathetic." The trap was sprung. Behind her, I saw a figure running across the grass. It was Dante. He looked wild. His shirt was untucked. His hair was a mess and his eyes were burning with madness. "You witch!" Dante screamed. Victoria jumped, spinning around. She saw him charging at her and the color drained from her face. "Dante," she gasped. "What are you doing here?" "I heard you," Dante roared, closing the distance. "I heard every word. You sold me out. You never loved me. You just wanted the money." He didn't stop running. He collided with her, knocking her off the bench. They tumbled onto the grass, a tangle of limbs and shouting. "You lied to me," Dante screamed, grabbing her shoulders and shaking her. "You said we were a team. You said it was us against the world." Victoria clawed at his face, screaming for help. "Get off me, you psycho! Elijah, help me! Give me the money!" I stood up and took a step back, adjusting my suit jacket. I watched them fight, rolling in the dirt like animals. It was tragic. It was pathetic. And it was exactly what I needed. Dante raised his hand and struck her. It was a hard slap that echoed through the park. Victoria wailed. He hit her again, fueled by the betrayal, fueled by the humiliation, fueled by the realization that his entire life was a lie. That was assault. In public. "With witnesses. Police, drop it!" A voice boomed from the tree line. Officers swarmed from the perimeter. I had called them 10 minutes ago, telling them I was meeting an extortionist and felt threatened. They had been watching the whole time. 3 officers pulled Dante off Victoria. He was thrashing, screaming obscenities at her. They slammed him onto the concrete, forcing his hands behind his back. "You set me up," Dante yelled, looking at me as they cuffed him. "You let me hear that. You wanted me to come here." I looked down at him. "I just wanted you to know the truth, son," I said calmly. "She sold you for a ticket to Paris." Victoria was sitting on the grass holding her cheek. Her lip was bleeding. She looked up at me, expecting me to help her, expecting the briefcase. "The money," she whispered. "You promised." I looked at her with disgust. "I promised to listen." "Victoria," I said, "I never said I would pay. You just confessed to perjury and conspiracy to commit fraud in front of a police surveillance team." Her eyes went wide as an officer approached her, pulling her to her feet. "Ma'am, you are under arrest for extortion and filing a false police report," the officer said. "No!" she screamed as they cuffed her. "We had a deal. Elijah, tell them." I turned and walked away toward the fountain. "There was no deal," I said to the wind. I watched as they were loaded into separate squad cars. Dante was still shouting, kicking at the window. Victoria was sobbing, her makeup running down her face in black streaks. They were finally where they belonged, in the back of a police car, facing the consequences of their greed. Strickland walked up beside me, holding the recording device. "Did you get it all?" I asked. "Every word," Sir Strickland said. "The confession, the solicitation of a bribe, the assault. It is all here." "Good," I said. "Send it to the district attorney, and send a copy to the media." I looked at the empty bench. The sun had set. The park lights flickered on. Phase 3 was complete. Dante was in jail for assault. Victoria was in jail for extortion. Their alliance was broken, shattered by their own selfishness. But this wasn't the end. This was just the cleanup. The real trial was still to come. The retrial for my case. The one where I would clear my name once and for all. And Dante wouldn't be able to hide behind his wife anymore. He would have to stand alone. I walked back to the Bentley. I felt lighter. The weight of the injustice was lifting, but I still had a few loose ends to tie up. Dante had tried to hide assets. He had opened a shell company using my name. He thought he was clever. Tomorrow I would show him what happens when you try to outsmart the master. I got into the car. "To the office, Strickland," I said. "We have a hostile takeover to finish." The gavel struck the wood block with a sound like a gunshot echoing through the high ceilings of the Superior Court. It was a sound I had dreamed of for 730 nights while staring at the ceiling of my prison cell. But this time I wasn't the defendant cowering in an orange jumpsuit praying for mercy. I was the petitioner standing in a $3,000 suit demanding justice. My attorney Strickland stood tall beside me. We had filed a motion for a retrial based on new exculpatory evidence. The recording from the park where Victoria confessed to perjury and conspiracy was our battering ram. The district attorney, a man named Patterson, looked tired. He knew his office had been played 2 years ago. He knew he had put an innocent man behind bars based on the lies of a social climber and a gambling addict. But the system does not like to admit mistakes. It fights to protect its own ego. Dante sat on the bench behind the defense table. He was out on bail for the assault charge, his legal fees paid for by a public defender because I had frozen every asset he tried to touch. He looked thin. His eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Victoria. Victoria sat separately, her lawyer whispering in her ear. She looked pale, her face devoid of the makeup she used to plaster on like armor. She was facing charges for extortion, but today she was here as a witness. Her testimony was supposed to be the key to unlocking my shackles forever. Strickland cleared his throat and addressed the judge. Your Honor, we are here to present irrefutable proof that the conviction of Elijah Freeman was obtained through fraud, perjury, and a criminal conspiracy orchestrated by the alleged victim, Victoria Freeman, and her husband, Dante Freeman. We have audio recordings of a confession. We have witness testimony from a third party placing herself at the scene. We move to vacate the conviction immediately and restore Mr. Freeman's good name. The judge, a gray-haired man who looked like he had seen everything, leaned forward. I have reviewed the recording, Mr. Strickland. It is compelling, but a recording obtained in a public park during a heated confrontation is open to interpretation. The witness is here. Let us hear from her directly. I felt a knot of tension in my stomach. I looked at Victoria. She was staring at the table, her hands clasping and unclasping. She had confessed in the park because she wanted money. She had confessed because she thought I was going to pay her off. But I hadn't paid her. I had arrested her. I wondered what a woman like Victoria does when she realizes she has nothing left to lose. State your name for the record, the bailiff said. Victoria Freeman, she whispered. Strickland walked up to the witness stand. He moved with the confidence of a shark in shallow water. Mrs. Freeman, he began. Did you or did you not admit to Elijah Freeman 2 days ago in Centennial Olympic Park that your husband Dante pushed you down the stairs on the night of November 14th 2 years ago? The courtroom held its breath. Dante leaned forward, gripping the back of the bench in front of him. Victoria looked up. Her eyes met mine. For a second I saw fear. But then I saw something else. Spite. Pure, unadulterated venom. She realized that even if she told the truth now, she was still going to jail for extortion. She was still broke. She was still ruined. But she had one card left to play. She could make sure I didn't win completely. I said those things, she said, her voice gaining strength. But they were lies. Strickland paused. I beg your pardon. I lied in the park, Victoria said louder this time, turning to face the judge. Elijah Freeman lured me there. He told me he would give me $500,000 if I changed my story. He told me he had men watching me. He told me that if I didn't blame Dante, he would hurt me. I was terrified, Your Honor. I said what he wanted to hear because I wanted to survive. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Dante let out a breath, his shoulders sagging in relief. He looked at Victoria with a sick kind of gratitude. They were doing it again. They were rewriting reality in real time. Strickland didn't flinch. He was a professional. Mrs. Freeman, you are under oath. We have police officers who witnessed the meeting. You demanded the money. You initiated the contact. He forced me to call him. Victoria cried, tears springing to her eyes on command. He has been stalking us since he got out. He evicted us. He humiliated us on television. He is a monster. He pushed me down those stairs because he hates me, and now he is using his money to try and rewrite history. The judge frowned, looking from Victoria to me. The narrative was getting muddy. The clear waters of truth were being silted up by her performance. If the judge believed her, or even if he just had enough doubt, he could deny the motion for a retrial. He could say the new evidence was tainted by coercion. I would be a free man, but I would still be a felon on paper. My legacy would still be stained. Dante's public defender stood up. Your Honor, this is clearly a case of a wealthy man using his power to intimidate a victim into recanting. The recording should be inadmissible. The walls were closing in again just like they did 2 years ago. I felt the heat rising in my collar. They were going to get away with it. They were going to drag me down into the mud with them. Strickland walked back to our table. He didn't look worried. He looked like a man who was holding a royal flush while his opponent bet the house on a pair of twos. He leaned down to me. She went for the bait, he whispered. I nodded. Proceed. Strickland turned back to the judge. Your Honor, the defense anticipates that the witness might be unreliable given her history of deception. That is why we are not resting our case on her word alone. We have another witness. The judge raised an eyebrow. I was not aware of another witness, Mr. Strickland. We located him 48 hours ago, Strickland said. He has been living in Guadalajara, Mexico for the past 2 years. We arranged for his transport and safety because he is the only person who saw the physical truth of that night before it was covered up. Dante frowned, confusion clouding his face. He whispered something to his lawyer. The defense calls Dr. Marcus Aris Strickland announced. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. A man in a simple suit walked in. He looked nervous, clutching a briefcase tightly, but he walked straight to the stand. Dante's face went white. He knew him. Dr. Aris was the emergency room attending physician the night Victoria was brought in. He was the one who treated her. He was the one who signed the initial report. But then he had vanished. He quit his job at Grady Memorial 2 weeks after my conviction and disappeared. Most people thought he retired. I knew better. People don't retire to Mexico in the middle of a career unless they are paid to or threatened to. Dr. Aris took the oath. He sat down and adjusted his glasses. He wouldn't look at Dante. Dr. Aris Strickland said, Can you tell the court why you left the country 2 years ago? Aris took a sip of water. His hand was shaking. I was paid, he said, his voice quiet. I received a wire transfer of $50,000 into an offshore account, and I received a phone call telling me that if I wanted to keep my medical license and my knees, I should take a long vacation. Who paid you? Strickland asked. Dante Freeman, Aris said. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel, demanding order. Dante was shaking his head, mouthing, no, no, no. And what did Mr. Freeman pay you to hide? Strickland asked. Aris opened his briefcase. He pulled out a file. The official report I filed was incomplete, he said. I omitted certain injuries at the request of the family. They told me it was a domestic dispute and they wanted to protect privacy. But I kept the raw notes. I kept the photos we took in Trauma Bay 1. He held up a photograph. It was graphic. It showed Victoria's back. It was covered in purple and black bruising. These are contusions on the scapula and upper thoracic region, Aris explained, pointing to the marks. They are consistent with high-velocity impact against a hard edge like a stair tread. But here, he pointed to 2 distinct oval-shaped bruises on the front of her shoulders right near the collarbone. These are thumbprints, he said, deep tissue bruising. This indicates she was grabbed with significant force from the front and shoved backward. The trajectory of the fall combined with these marks proves the physics of the assault. Strickland let the words hang in the air. Dr. Aris Strickland continued. If Elijah Freeman had been kneeling at the bottom of the stairs, as the prosecution claimed 2 years ago, could he have caused these injuries? No, Aris said firmly. To create this leverage, the attacker had to be standing on the same level or slightly above the victim. He had to be facing her. He had to push her down. If Mr. Freeman was at the bottom, he could not have generated the force required to send her backward with this specific injury pattern. And who fits the profile of the attacker based on these injuries? Strickland asked. Someone of equal height standing at the top of the stairs, Aris said. Someone like Dante Freeman. Victoria let out a sob. It wasn't fake this time. It was the sound of a trap snapping shut. Dr. Aris looked at the judge. I was a coward, Your Honor. I took the money because I was in debt and I was scared. But when Mr. Elijah Freeman's investigator found me, he didn't threaten me. He offered me protection. He told me it was time to clear my conscience. So here I am. Strickland turned to Dante. Mr. Freeman paid $50,000 to hide the fact that he assaulted his wife. He paid a doctor to falsify records. And he framed his father for a crime he physically could not have committed in the manner described. The judge looked at Dante. The contempt in his eyes was palpable. Mr. Dante Freeman, the judge, said, his voice cold. You are hereby remanded into custody immediately. Your bail is revoked. This court will be recommending charges of witness tampering, bribery, and perjury to the district attorney. Dante stood up, panic overtaking him. "This is a lie," he screamed, pointing at Eris. "You paid him, Dad. You paid him to say this." Bailiffs moved in, grabbing Dante by the arms. He struggled, kicking and shouting. "I didn't do it," he yelled. "Victoria told me to. It was her idea." He was throwing her under the bus again. Even at the end, he was a coward. Victoria sat frozen. She knew it was over. Her testimony about me coercing her had just been proven false by the forensic evidence of her own injuries. She was trapped in a web of her own making. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Freeman," the judge said, his tone softening. "Based on the overwhelming evidence presented by Dr. Eris and the corroboration of the recordings, I am granting the motion for a retrial. Furthermore, I am entering a directed verdict of acquittal. The state has failed to prove its case, and in fact the defense has proven actual innocence." He banged the gavel. "You are exonerated, Mr. Freeman. Your record is expunged effective immediately. You are free." The courtroom burst into noise. Reporters were shouting questions. My legal team was shaking hands, but I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I stood up and buttoned my jacket. I looked at Dante being dragged through the side door in handcuffs. I looked at Victoria being read her rights by a marshal. They were gone. The parasites were removed. I turned to Strickland. "Good work," I said. "Thank you, Sir," Strickland replied. I walked out of the courtroom a free man in the eyes of the law. But the war wasn't over. Dante still had assets hidden. He had tried to move money while I was distracted with the trial. He thought he could stash away enough to start over when he got out. He was wrong. I walked to the Bentley. "To the bank, Strickland," I said. "We are going to drain the swamp." Dante was out on bail for less than 45 minutes before he tried to steal from me again. It was a reflex for him, like breathing or lying. He didn't go to see his wife. He didn't go to see the son he claimed to love. He went straight to a nondescript office park in Dunwoody. I sat in the Bentley watching the GPS tracker dot moving across the map on my tablet. Strickland was beside me on the phone with the forensic accounting team. "He is heading to the shell company," Strickland confirmed. "The one he set up 5 years ago. D-Free Enterprises. He thinks we don't know about the offshore accounts attached to it." I nodded. Dante thought he was clever. He had been siphoning off clients from Freeman Logistics for years, diverting small contracts to his own side business. He thought he had built a nest egg, a secret kingdom where I couldn't touch him. He thought that even if he lost the trust fund, he still had the $3 million he had skimmed sitting in a Cayman Island account. "Drive," I told the driver. We arrived at the office park just as Dante was running inside. He looked manic. His suit was rumpled from his night in jail, and he was sweating through his shirt. He didn't notice us. He was too focused on his salvation. We took the elevator up to the 3rd floor. I walked down the hallway, my cane tapping rhythmically on the cheap tile. The door to Suite 304 was unlocked. Dante was hunched over a laptop, his fingers flying across the keys. He was muttering to himself. Come on, load, you stupid thing." I stood in the doorway. "It won't work, Dante," I said. He jumped, knocking his chair over. He spun around, wild-eyed. "Dad!" He gasped. "How did you find me?" I walked into the room. It was sparse. Just a desk, a chair, and a shredder that looked like it had overheated. "I never lost you, Dante," I said. "I knew about D-Free Enterprises 6 months after you started it. I knew you were stealing my clients. I knew you were undercutting my rates to build your own capital." Dante backed up against the window. So what he said, a desperate sneer forming on his face. "You can't touch this money. This is a separate entity. I am the sole proprietor. The trust has no jurisdiction here. This is mine. I earned it." "You stole it," I corrected. "But that is irrelevant right now." I walked over to the desk and looked at the laptop screen. He was on the login page for a Caribbean bank. The transfer button was grayed out. "Why isn't it working?" Dante asked, his voice cracking. "Why can't I move the money?" "Because I froze it," I said. "You can't." Dante screamed, "You don't have the authority. I am the owner." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a document. It was old, yellowed at the edges. I unfolded it and smoothed it out on the desk next to his computer. "Do you remember this?" I asked. Dante looked at it. It was an employment contract. "This is my old contract," he said. "From when I started as a VP at Freeman Logistics 5 years ago." "So what?" "I quit." I tapped paragraph 12, section C. "Read it," I said. Dante squinted. He read it. Then he read it again. His face went from pale to ghostly white. "Non-compete and intellectual property assignment," he whispered. "Keep reading," I said. "Any and all business ventures created during the term of employment using Freeman Logistics, Contacts, proprietary information or resources, including but not limited to client lists and shipping routes, are the sole property of Elijah Freeman. Any assets derived from such ventures are subject to immediate forfeiture upon termination of employment for cause. Dante looked up at me. "You signed it, Dante," I said. "You signed it 5 years ago because you were too arrogant to read the fine print. You thought it was just standard paperwork. You thought you were smarter than the old man. This holds up in court." Dante asked, his voice barely audible. Strickland stepped into the room. "It holds up everywhere, Mr. Freeman," Strickland said. "We filed an injunction an hour ago. A judge reviewed the contract and the evidence of client theft. He granted a temporary restraining order on all assets held by D-Free Enterprises. The Cayman Bank has already complied." Dante looked at the laptop, then at the contract, then at me. "It is all gone," he whispered. "Every dime I said. The $3 million you stole, the emergency fund, the escape plan. It all belongs to me now." Dante sank to the floor. He didn't cry. He just stared at nothing. He was finally truly empty. I watched him for a moment. This was the son I had wanted to hand my empire to. This was the boy I had taught to ride a bike. And he had turned into a thief who didn't even bother to read a contract. I picked up the laptop. "We will be taking this," I said. "Evidence." I turned and walked out, leaving him sitting on the floor of a rented office in a pool of his own failure. He had nothing left. No money, no family, no leverage. But the destruction wasn't finished. There was one more loose end. Victoria. While Dante was trying to salvage his stolen fortune, Victoria had been making moves of her own. She wasn't at the jail when Dante was released on bail. She hadn't come to the office. She had realized that Dante was a sinking ship and she had no intention of drowning with him. She had called a taxi from the courthouse. She had given the driver an address in Buckhead, the address of her parents. The Sterling estate was a monument to old money and pretension. Big white columns, manicured hedges, and a gate that kept the riffraff out. Victoria thought she could go back. She thought she could cry to her mother, blame everything on Dante, and be welcomed back into the fold of high society. She forgot one thing: the interview. I had Strickland pull up the security footage from the gate of the Sterling estate. I watched it on my tablet as we drove away from Dante's office. Victoria stood at the intercom. She looked ragged. Her hair was messy, she was wearing the same clothes from court, and she was carrying a plastic bag with her few possessions. "Mom, let me in," she said into the speaker. "It is Victoria. Please. I have nowhere to go." There was a long silence. Then the voice of her father, Mr. Sterling, crackled over the speaker. "Go away, Victoria." "Daddy, please," Victoria begged. "You saw the news. Elijah is ruining us. I need help." "We saw the interview, Victoria, Mr. Sterling said, his voice cold and distant. "We heard what you said. Poor black fools. Is that what you think?" "That was a recording," Victoria lied desperately. "It was fake." "Do not lie to me," Mr. Sterling snapped. "I know your voice. And more importantly, the country club knows your voice. The charity board knows your voice. We have been fielding calls all morning. We have been removed from the gala committee. People are canceling dinner plans. You have humiliated this family. Daddy, I am your daughter." "You are a liability," Mr. Sterling said. "We warned you about marrying him. We told you it was a mistake, but you didn't listen, and now you have dragged our name through the mud. We cannot be associated with you right now. Not until this blows over." "When will it blow over?" Victoria cried. "I have no money. They took the car. I am homeless, Daddy." "Then go to a shelter," Mr. Sterling said. "Or go back to your husband. But do not come in here. The press is camped out down the street. If I let you in, they will think we condone your bigotry. Go away, Victoria." The intercom clicked off. Victoria stood there stunned. She pounded on the gate. Mom, please open the gate." No answer. She sank to her knees on the pavement. She was truly alone. Her parents, the people who had taught her to value status over character, had just discarded her to save their own reputation. It was poetic justice. She had treated me like a disposable resource, and now she was being disposed of. I closed the tablet. "Where is she now?" I asked Strickland. "She is walking south on Piedmont, sir," Strickland said. "She is on foot." "Good," I said. "Let her walk. Let her feel the pavement through her shoes. Let her see the city she mocked from the sidewalk instead of a Porsche." I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was a text from Dante. "You win. What do you want?" I smiled. He was finally asking the right question. I typed a response. Meet me at the house tonight. Bring Victoria if you can find her. I sent it. It was time for the final confrontation, the ending of the story. I wanted it to happen where it all began. In the house they stole. In the house they defiled. I had the deed. I had the keys. Tonight I would close the door on the past forever. We drove back toward the estate. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and angry red. It was fitting. When we arrived, the house was dark. The power had been cut. I had ordered that too. Dante was sitting on the front steps. He looked like a ghost. Victoria was there too, sitting a few feet away from him. She looked broken. They didn't speak to each other. They just stared into the darkness. I stepped out of the car. The headlights cut through the gloom, illuminating them like deer in the road. I walked up the path, my cane tapping against the stone. You asked what I want, Dante, I said, stopping at the foot of the stairs. Dante looked up. His eyes were hollow. I want you to leave, I said. We have nowhere to go, Dante whispered. I know, I said, and I don't care. I pulled a set of keys from my pocket. They were the keys to the house. This is my home, I said. It always was. You were just guests who overstayed their welcome. Victoria looked up. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears. Elijah, please, she rasped. Just a loan, just enough to get a room. We will pay you back. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had called my people fools. No, I said. I turned to Dante. But I am not a monster, I said. I will give you one thing. A choice. Dante frowned. What choice? I reached into my pocket and pulled out a bus ticket. Just one. This is a ticket to Detroit, I said. One way. It leaves in 2 hours. There is a factory there hiring. Hard work. Minimum wage. But it is a job. And it is far away from here. I held it out. And Victoria, Dante asked. I only have one ticket, I said. Dante looked at the ticket. Then he looked at Victoria. Victoria looked at him, her eyes wide with fear. Dante, you can't leave me. We are married. Dante looked back at the ticket. He stood up slowly. His legs were shaky. He reached out and took the ticket from my hand. Victoria screamed, scrambling to her feet. You coward. You bastard. Dante didn't look at her. He looked at me. Thank you, he whispered. He walked past me down the driveway into the darkness toward the main road where the bus stop was. He didn't look back. Victoria stood there, mouth open, watching him go. She was alone, truly, completely alone. She turned to me, hate burning in her eyes. I hope you rot in hell, she spat. I smiled. I already did, Victoria. I spent 2 years there. Now it is your turn. I turned my back on her and walked up the stairs to my front door. I unlocked it and stepped inside. I closed the heavy oak door and locked it. I was home. The house was empty, quiet, and dark, but it was mine. I walked to the window and looked out. Victoria was walking down the driveway, dragging her feet disappear into the night. She had no money, no family, no friends. She was a ghost. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of dust and victory. My son was gone. My daughter-in-law was gone. I had my grandson safe with his mother in Savannah. I had my company. I had my dignity. It had cost me 2 years of my life. But I had bought my freedom back. I walked into the kitchen and found a candle. I lit it. The small flame flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Tomorrow I would start rebuilding. I would bring Leo here. I would fill this house with laughter and truth. I would teach him what it means to be a free man. But for tonight, I would just sit in the silence and enjoy the sound of my enemies losing. The rain came down in sheets, hammering against the roof of the estate like a drum roll for an execution. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week after I had offered my son a bus ticket to Detroit. He hadn't taken it. I knew he wouldn't. Dante was too proud to work and too weak to leave. He stayed in the city, sleeping in shelters, scrounging for food, and letting the rot in his soul turn into a festering need for violence. I sat in the high-backed leather chair in the center of the living room. The house was dark, save for the single lamp on the side table next to my glass of Pinot Noir. I wasn't sleeping. I was waiting. Strickland had called me 3 hours ago. His contacts on the street had tipped him off. Dante had been seen in the mechanics district buying a piece, a snub-nosed 38 special with the serial numbers filed off. He paid for it with his wedding ring, the last thing of value he owned. A desperate man with a gun only has one destination. I heard the glass break in the kitchen. It wasn't a stealthy entry, it was a smash and grab entry. The sound of a brick going through the patio door followed by the crunch of boots on broken glass. The security alarm didn't go off because I had disabled it. I didn't want the police to interrupt us. Not yet. Heavy footsteps came down the hallway, wet, dragging footsteps. I took a sip of wine and set the glass down on the coaster. Dante stepped into the living room. He was a wreck. His clothes were soaked and muddy. He had lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks. His eyes were sunk deep into his skull, surrounded by dark bruises of exhaustion. He looked like a ghost that had crawled out of a grave to haunt the living. In his right hand he held the gun. It was shaking violently. He saw me sitting there calm and composed, and he stopped. He raised the gun, pointing it at my chest. "You took everything," Dante rasped. His voice was a broken thing. "You took my life. You took my wife. You took my son." I looked at the gun, then up at his face. I didn't flinch. I didn't beg. I took nothing, Dante. I said, my voice steady. I recovered what was stolen, and I protected what was vulnerable. "You ruined me," he screamed, the gun wavering. "I am starving, Dad. I am sleeping under a bridge. Look at me. This is your fault." "It is always my fault, isn't it?" I asked. "It was my fault when you failed math. It was my fault when you crashed your first car. It was my fault when you cheated on your wife. You have never owned a mistake in your life." "Shut up," Dante yelled. "Shut up. I am here to end it. I am going to kill you, and then I am going to take what is mine." "There is nothing left to take," I said. "The accounts are locked. The deeds are transferred. Even if you shoot me, you won't get a dime. You will just go to prison for life instead of 15 years. "I don't care," Dante said, tears mixing with the rain on his face. "I just want you gone. I want to stop seeing your face in my nightmares." He took a step closer. He was 10 feet away now, point-blank range. I leaned forward in my chair, resting my elbows on my knees. "Do it then," I said. Dante froze. He expected me to plead. He expected me to offer him money. "Pull the trigger, son," I challenged him. "Show me you have the conviction to finish something for once in your life." Dante's hand tightened on the grip. His knuckle turned white. He squeezed his eyes shut. "Goodbye, Dad," he whispered. He pulled the trigger. Click. The sound was small, but in the silence of the room it was deafening. The hammer struck the primer, but there was no explosion, no flash, no bullet. Dante opened his eyes. He looked at the gun in confusion. He pulled the trigger again. Click. He pulled it a third time. Click, click, click. He looked up at me, panic flooding his face, replacing the rage. "It is jammed," he stammered. "It is broken. It is not broken," I said, standing up slowly. "And it isn't jammed. It is empty. Or rather, it is full of duds." Dante stepped back, shaking his head. "How?" "You bought that gun from a man named T-Bone," I said, walking toward him. "T-Bone runs a chop shop on 4th Street. T-Bone also drives one of my trucks on the weekend. He called me the second you left his shop. I told him to sell you the gun. But I told him to swap the firing pins or give you bad ammo. He chose the ammo." I stopped 2 feet from him. Dante was paralyzed by the realization that even in his darkest moment, I was still 2 steps ahead. "You are a child playing with toys, Dante," I said. "And I am tired of playing." Dante roared a sound of pure animal frustration and swung the heavy metal pistol at my head. It was a clumsy, wild swing. He forgot who I was before I was a CEO. He forgot that before I wore suits, I wore fatigues. I served 2 tours in the Marines before he was even a thought in the universe. I spent the last 2 years in a prison yard keeping young wolves at bay. I caught his wrist in midair. The shock on his face was satisfying. I twisted his arm outward, locking his elbow. He dropped the gun. It clattered to the floor. I didn't let go. I stepped in, pivoting my hips, and drove my shoulder into his chest while pulling his arm back. I heard the snap of the radius bone before he screamed. Dante hit the floor hard, writhing in agony, clutching his broken arm. He curled into a fetal position, sobbing into the rug. I stood over him, breathing calmly. I adjusted my cuffs. I picked up the phone on the side table and dialed 911. 911. "What is your emergency?" the operator asked. "There is an intruder in my home." I said, my voice flat. "He is armed. I have neutralized him. Send the police." I hung up. I looked down at my son. He was broken in every way a man can be broken. Physically, financially, and spiritually. Why he whimpered through the pain. Why did you let me pull the trigger? Because I needed to know. I needed to know if you would really do it. If there was any part of my son left inside that shell. And I asked. You pulled the trigger, Dante. You tried to kill me. That is my answer. I walked back to my chair and sat down. I picked up my wine. I watched him cry until the sirens wailed in the distance. The blue lights flashed against the rain-streaked windows, painting the room in a cold, rhythmic light. The police arrived, guns drawn. They found an elderly man sitting calmly with a glass of wine and a younger man broken on the floor with a gun beside him. It was an open and shut case. Attempted murder, burglary, assault. They handcuffed Dante. He screamed as they pulled his broken arm behind his back, but I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I watched them drag him out into the storm. The house was quiet again. The rain kept beating on the roof. I finished my wine. It was a good vintage. The trial was a formality, a spectacle for the city to watch as the final curtain fell on the Freeman tragedy. The courtroom was packed every day. People lined up around the block to get a seat. They wanted to see the fall of the prodigal son. Dante sat at the defense table, his arm in a cast, his face gaunt. He didn't have a high-priced lawyer this time. He had a public defender who looked overworked and resigned to defeat. Victoria sat a few feet away in her orange jumpsuit. She looked older. The stress had carved deep lines into her face. They didn't look at each other. The hatred between them was a physical force in the room. The prosecutor laid it all out. The fraud, the perjury, the conspiracy to commit murder on the mountain, the assault in the park, and finally the break-in at my estate. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the text messages from Candace, the testimony of the doctor from Mexico, and the gun found on Dante's floor with his fingerprints all over it. When it was my turn to give a victim impact statement, I declined. I had said everything I needed to say to them. My silence spoke louder than any speech. It told them they were no longer worth my breath. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. It would have been less, but they probably wanted a free lunch. When the foreman stood up to read the verdict, the room went deathly still. We, the jury, find the defendant, Dante Freeman, guilty on all counts. Attempted murder in the first degree, aggravated assault, perjury, fraud. We, the jury, find the defendant, Victoria Freeman, guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder, extortion, perjury. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked down at them. Dante Freeman, you have shown a callous disregard for human life, including the lives of your own parents. You have squandered every opportunity given to you and chose a path of greed and violence. I sentence you to 15 years in the state penitentiary without the possibility of parole for the first 10. Dante closed his eyes and lowered his head. 15 years. He would be 47 when he got out. His life was effectively over. Victoria Freeman, the judge, continued, you were the architect of much of this misery. Your greed drove this conspiracy. I sentence you to 10 years in the state penitentiary. Victoria let out a wail that sounded like a wounded animal. She was dragged away, kicking and screaming, begging for mercy she had never shown anyone else. I walked out of the courtroom surrounded by reporters. They thrust microphones in my face, asking how I felt, asking if I forgave them. I ignored them. Strickland cleared a path to the Bentley. Take me to the facility, I said to the driver. We drove to the outskirts of the city, to the same gray concrete fortress where I had spent 2 years of my life. But this time, I wasn't going to the processing center. I parked on the hill overlooking the intake gate. I waited. An hour later, the transport bus rumbled up the road. It was a blue bird bus painted white with bars on the windows. It stopped at the gate. The heavy steel doors slid open, grinding against the track just like they had for me. I watched through binoculars. Dante stepped off the bus. He was shackled at the ankles and wrists. He was wearing the orange jumpsuit. He looked small. He looked terrified. He looked up at the guard tower, and then for a split second he looked up at the hill where my car was parked. I don't know if he saw me. It didn't matter. Victoria stepped off next. She was stumbling, crying, trying to wipe her face with hands that were chained to her waist. They were processed. They were searched. They were marched through the doors into the belly of the beast. The gate slid shut with a final resounding clang. I lowered the binoculars. It was done. The circle was closed. I had walked out of that gate and put them inside. Justice wasn't just blind, it was poetic. Drive, I said. Where to, sir? The driver asked. The preschool, I said. I need to pick up my grandson. The Bentley glided away from the prison, leaving the misery behind. We drove back toward the city, toward the life I had reclaimed. When we arrived at the private preschool in Buckhead, Candace was waiting. She smiled when she saw the car. She had done well. She had testified she had kept her head down and she was being a good mother. I had set her up with a house and a trust for herself. She was safe. But Leo ran to me. "Grandpa," he shouted, his little legs pumping as he raced across the grass. I crouched down and caught him. He felt solid and warm. He smelled like crayons and sunshine. I lifted him up and spun him around. He laughed, a pure, unburdened sound that washed away the last lingering filth of the prison cell. I carried him to the car. I buckled him into his car seat. "Where are we going?" Grandpa Leo asked, kicking his feet. "We are going to get ice cream," I said. "And then I am going to teach you something." What? Leo asked, eyes wide. "I am going to teach you how to be a man," I said. "A real man. Someone who builds things instead of stealing them. Someone who protects his family instead of hurting them." I climbed into the back seat next to him. Strickland closed the door. The car pulled out into traffic. I looked at my grandson. He was the future. Dante was the past, a mistake that had been corrected. I had my empire, I had my freedom, and I had the next generation of freemen. I leaned back and watched the city pass by. The sun was shining, the road was open, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. End of story. The lesson. For 45 years, I believed that blood was the strongest bond on earth. I was wrong. I learned the hard way that loyalty is not inherited, it is a daily choice. By constantly shielding my son from his own failures, I didn't help him. I crippled his character. The most painful lesson of my life was accepting that sometimes being a good father means letting your child face the full weight of the consequences they created. I lost the son I thought I had, but in the ashes of that betrayal, I found the truth. True family isn't defined by who sits at your table when the feast is served, but by who stands beside you when the world turns its back. Call to action. If you believe that respect must be earned regardless of blood, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, what is the one unforgivable act that would make you walk away from your family forever?